They said I was worthless, a mistake Endeavor threw away before I could even walk. But that abandonment forged something inside me hotter than any hero's flame. I became living magma, pure, unstoppable destruction. Justice will prevail, and whoever wins becomes justice. I am that justice. While my father chased dreams, I became the nightmare villain's fear. This is my rise. Watch me dominate.
Welcome, legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The night Izuku Midoriya was conceived began with whiskey and ended with consequences that would reshape the world. Enji Todoroki, not yet the number 2 hero endeavor in public consciousness, but already obsessed with surpassing All Might, sat in a dimly lit bar in downtown Musutafu. He'd just completed another patrol where he'd watched All Might's effortless smile charm the masses while he stood in the symbol of peace's shadow. The whiskey burned, but not as much as his pride. Inko Shimura sat 3 stools down, nursing her own grief. Her cousin Nana had died years ago, and the anniversary always hit hard. She was small, plain, with gentle green hair and eyes that held too much sadness. Her quirk, a weak telekinesis that could pull small objects to her hand, was as unremarkable as the rest of her life. They were both in heat, both vulnerable, both making the worst decision of their lives. What happened next was biology, alcohol, and 2 people seeking comfort in all the wrong places. Enji saw nothing in her but a warm body. Inko saw nothing in him but an escape from loneliness. They stumbled to a cheap hotel, and for one night, consequences didn't matter. 3 weeks later, when Inko discovered she was pregnant and tracked down the rising hero to tell him, Enji Todoroki looked at her with the same cold calculation he used on villains. Get rid of it. Inko's hands trembled. I can't. I won't. Then you're on your own. His voice carried no warmth, no regret. I'm building something, a perfect heir to surpass All Might. Your quirk is worthless. Whatever child comes from this union will be equally worthless. I want nothing to do with either of you. He turned his back on her and never looked back. Inko raised her son alone in a cramped apartment in the worst part of Musutafu. Society had opinions about unwed mothers, harsh opinions. Whispered judgments followed her everywhere, at the grocery store, at the clinic, in the disapproving stares of neighbors who knew her son had no father. Bastard child, they whispered. Single mother, they said with contempt. Must have been a quirk marriage gone wrong, they speculated. Inko endured it all with quiet dignity, working double shifts at her telemarketing job to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. She never told her son who his father was. What good would it do? The man wanted nothing to do with them. Izuku Midoriya grew up knowing he was different. Not because of any quirk. He hadn't manifested one yet. But because of the way adults looked at his mother, the way other children's parents pulled them away from him at the park, the way family seemed to be a concept that applied to everyone but them. He was 4 years old when everything changed. Normalement. The night started like any other. Inko had just gotten home from her evening shift, exhausted but smiling for her son. Izuku sat at their small kitchen table, coloring a picture of a hero. Not All Might, but a hero of his own design. One with fire and power and strength. Mommy's home, Inko called out, her voice warm despite her fatigue. Izuku's face lit up. Mommy, look what I drew. She crossed the room to examine his artwork, genuine pride in her eyes. It's wonderful, Izuku. Is this you as a hero? Uh-huh. I'm gonna be strong, Mommy. Strong enough to protect you from everyone who's mean to you. Inko's heart broke and swelled simultaneously. Her son, so young, already understood more than he should about their circumstances. She pulled him into a hug. You already protect me, sweetheart, just by being you. The door exploded inward. 3 men rushed into the apartment, quirks active. One had stone skin, another had blade-like fingers, and the third could generate acidic saliva. Small-time villains, desperate for cash, targeting what they thought would be an easy mark, a single mother in the poor district. Wallet and valuables. Now! The stone-skinned villain barked. Inko stepped in front of Izuku instinctively. Please, we don't have much. The blade-fingered villain slashed at her, cutting across her arm like blood splattered. Inko cried out, stumbling backward. Izuku saw his mother bleed. He saw the villains laugh. He saw everything that mattered to him in danger, and something inside him erupted. Rage. Pure, absolute, burning rage. Not the hot anger of a child's tantrum, but something deeper, older, more primal. It was the rage of someone who had watched his mother suffer every indignity society could throw at them. It was the rage of a child who understood, even at 4 years old, that some people existed only to hurt others. These villains had come into their home. They had hurt his mother. They would pay. The temperature in the apartment skyrocketed. Izuku's skin began to glow, first red, then orange, then white-hot. His entire body transformed, flesh becoming molten rock, clothing burning away as magma consumed him. The transformation was instantaneous and complete. The Magu Magu no Mi had awakened. The stone-skinned villain barely had time to scream before Izuku's small magma fist, glowing with heat that exceeded 2,000 degrees, punched through his chest. The villain's stone skin offered no protection. It melted like wax, flesh and bone, vaporizing on contact. The man fell backward, a hole where his heart used to be, dead before he hit the ground. The blade-fingered villain turned to run. Izuku's arm extended, magma stretching and forming into the shape of a massive hound's head. Inagami Guren, though he didn't know the name yet. The construct smashed into the villain's back, magma teeth closing around his torso. The man's screams lasted 2 seconds before the heat reduced him to ash and molten slag. The third villain, the one with acidic saliva, vomited in terror and tried to use his quirk. Izuku looked at him with eyes that burned like miniature suns. "You hurt, mommy." His voice was different, deeper. Cold despite the heat radiating from his body. The villain's acid hissed against Izuku's magma form and evaporated instantly. Izuku walked forward, each step leaving molten footprints that burned through the apartment floor. He raised his hand, and magma pooled in his palm. Villains don't deserve mercy. He didn't know where the words came from. They felt right, true, absolute. The magma shot forward, engulfing the villain's head. The man's quirk meant nothing. His desperate struggles meant nothing. In seconds, he collapsed. Nothing remaining above the shoulders but cooling slag. The apartment was a disaster. Scorch marks covered every surface. 3 bodies, or what remained of them, lay cooling on the floor. The air stank of burned flesh and melted plastic. Izuku's magma form receded. His small body returned to normal, naked and shaking, but his eyes remained different. Harder, older. Inko stared at her son, clutching her bleeding arm, and felt 2 overwhelming emotions. Terror at what she just witnessed, and fierce, protective pride that her son had saved them both. Izuku. He ran to her, and his touch was warm but not burning. Somehow, instinctively, he controlled it. His mother would never be hurt by his power. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm sorry I made a mess. But they hurt you. They can't hurt you." Inko pulled him close, ignoring the blood, the death, the horror of it all. Her son had a quirk, a powerful quirk, a deadly quirk, and society would never look at them the same way again. The aftermath was chaos. Pro-heroes arrived to find a small child standing in an apartment with 3 dead villains. The media descended like vultures. 4-year-old kills 3 villains, screamed the headlines. Some called him a hero, others called him a monster. The Hero Public Safety Commission conducted an investigation. They interviewed Izuku, examined the scene, and ultimately ruled it justifiable self-defense. The villains had attacked first. The child had defended his mother. Case closed. But the court of public opinion was less forgiving. A child with that much power is dangerous. Those killing techniques weren't self-defense, they were execution. What kind of quirk turns a 4-year-old into a murderer? Inko endured the scrutiny with the same quiet strength she'd shown for years. She held her son close and told him the truth he needed to hear. "Your quirk is powerful, Izuku, more powerful than anything I've ever seen. People will fear it. They'll fear you. But power itself isn't good or evil. It's how you use it that matters." Izuku absorbed her words, but he'd already drawn his own conclusions. He'd felt the rage, the satisfaction of seeing the villains who hurt his mother reduced to nothing. He'd felt powerful, unstoppable, and he'd liked it. Not the killing itself, he wasn't a psychopath, but the certainty, the finality, the absolute justice of removing evil from the world permanently. Villains had hurt his mother. He'd stopped them. Forever. That was justice. Over the next few years, Izuku trained his quirk obsessively. He learned control, discovering he could transform selectively. Just an arm, just his torso, just his hands. He learned he could regulate temperature, creating warmth instead of burning heat when he wanted. He learned he could generate magma from nothing, shaping it into weapons and constructs. Most importantly, he learned he could choose who his power harmed. His mother could touch him in magma form and feel only warmth. Anyone he considered an ally was safe. But villains, threats, anyone who opposed him, they would burn. He discovered the techniques through instinct and practice. The massive magma fist he could launch like a volcanic eruption, Daifunka. The extending magma arm shaped like a hound, Inugami Guren. The devastating close-range magma punch, Meigo. And most impressively, the meteor shower of magma fists he could rain down on an area, Ryusei Kazan. Inko watched her son grow harder, colder, more focused. He wasn't cruel to her, never to her. He helped with chores, told her he loved her, smiled at her jokes, but with everyone else he was different. Distant. Calculating. When other children tried to play with him at the park, he ignored them. When teachers tried to connect with him at school, he gave them polite indifference. When adults whispered about him being a bastard child, he stared at them with those cold green eyes until they looked away. He had one goal: become the greatest hero the world had ever seen. Not through smiles and inspirational speeches like All Might, through absolute power and absolute justice. Villains would learn to fear the name Izuku Midoriya. Izuku was 12 when he finally asked about his father. They sat at dinner, rice and vegetables, cheap but filling, and Izuku set down his chopsticks with deliberate care. "Who's my father?" Inko froze mid-bite. She'd known this day would come, but hoped it wouldn't be for years yet. She looked at her son, trying to find the cheerful 4-year-old who'd colored pictures of heroes, but saw instead a young man with eyes older than his years. She could lie, spare him the truth. But Izuku deserved better than that. His name is Enji Todoroki, the hero Endeavor. Izuku's expression didn't change. No shock, no anger, just cold calculation. "He knows about me?" "Yes." Inko's voice cracked. "I told him when I found out I was pregnant. He wanted nothing to do with us. He called me and you worthless, said your quirk combination would be weak." A bitter smile touched Izuku's lips. "Weak. I'm sorry, Izuku. I should have told you sooner, but..." "Don't apologize, Mom." His voice was gentle, reserved only for her. "You did nothing wrong. He did. He threw away something precious because he couldn't see its value. His loss." Inko reached across the table, taking his hand. It was warm. Always warm, like holding a son made solid. "You're not worthless, Izuku. You're extraordinary. You're my son and I'm proud of you." "I know, Mom, and I'll prove it." "Not to him. He doesn't matter, but to everyone who ever looked down on us, everyone who called me a bastard, everyone who pitied you for raising me alone, I'll show them what real power looks like." That night, lying in bed, Izuku stared at the ceiling and thought about Endeavor. The number 2 hero, obsessed with surpassing All Might. A man who'd created multiple children in pursuit of the perfect heir. A man who'd abandoned a pregnant woman without a second thought. Izuku felt no anger toward him. Anger implied caring. Anger meant Endeavor's opinion mattered. It didn't. Endeavor was nothing to him. Less than nothing. A sperm donor who'd made the mistake of discarding what would become the most powerful hero in Japan. One day, they'd meet. Endeavor would see what his worthless son had become, and Izuku would look at him with the same cold indifference Endeavor had shown Inko all those years ago. But that was for later. For now, Izuku had training to do and a future to build. The incident that brought Izuku to Yue's attention happened 3 weeks before the entrance exam. Izuku was riding the train home from a rare outing. He'd gone to check out Yue's campus, wanting to familiarize himself with the layout. The train was crowded, typical for evening rush hour in Musutafu. That's when the villains struck. His quirk was simple but effective. He could stretch his limbs like rubber, and he used this to grab hostages while demanding the other passengers empty their wallets. A small-time crook looking for quick cash, nothing special. He made the mistake of grabbing a woman standing near Izuku. "Nobody moves. Nobody gets hurt," the villain shouted, his stretched arm wrapped around the woman's throat. "Just give me your money and—" Izuku stood up. The temperature in the train car spiked instantly. Passengers gasped, backing away as they felt the heat radiating from the teenage boy. "Let her go," the villain laughed. "Or what, kid? You'll burn the nice lady? I don't think." Izuku's hand transformed, flesh becoming glowing magma. He grabbed the villain's stretched arm and squeezed. The villain's quirk meant nothing against 2,000-degree heat. His rubber-like limb melted like plastic in a furnace. He screamed, releasing the woman and trying to pull back his arm, but Izuku held firm. Villains don't get warnings. Izuku pulled, and the villain stumbled forward. Before the man could react, Izuku's magma fist, now shaped into his Mago technique, slammed into the villain's chest. The impact wasn't just force. It was heat. It was finality. The villain's torso caved in, flesh and bone vaporizing on contact. What remained of him collapsed to the floor, nothing but a melted, smoking corpse. Izuku's hand returned to normal. He looked around at the other passengers, all frozen in terror and shock. Someone call the authorities, tell them a villain attacked and was neutralized. His voice carried complete authority despite his youth. Nobody argued. Several people fumbled for their phones. The woman he'd saved stared at him, uncertain whether to thank him or run. "You're safe now," Izuku told her, his tone softening slightly. "He can't hurt anyone anymore." When the heroes and police arrived, they found Izuku sitting calmly in his seat, the villain's corpse cooling nearby. The passengers gave statements confirming the villain had attacked first, that Izuku had acted in defense of others. Present Mike, who happened to be the pro-hero responding to the call, stared at the teenage boy with a mixture of awe and concern. "You're pretty young to be taking down villains solo, listener. What's your name?" "Izuku Midoriya. I'm applying to UA next week." Present Mick looked at the melted villain, then back at Izuku, then whistled low. "Well, damn. Remind me never to get on your bad side. That quirk of yours is something else. It gets the job done." "Yeah, it sure does. Maybe too well." Present Mike crouched down to eye level. "Listen, kid. You did the right thing, stopping this guy, but killing villains isn't something heroes usually do. We try to capture and rehabilitate. Rehabilitation doesn't work on people who choose villainy." Izuku's green eyes met Present Meek's without flinching. He threatened innocent people, he would have done it again. Now he won't. That's justice. Present Mike didn't have a response to that. The kid's logic was brutal, but it wasn't wrong. And those eyes, they held conviction that most pro-heroes took decades to develop. "We'll see you at the entrance exam, Izuku Midoriya. Something tells me you'll make quite an impression." Izuku allowed himself a small smile. That's the plan. The incident made local news. Student kills villain on train wasn't quite as sensational as his first kills at age 4, but it reminded the public that the magma quirk child was still out there, still dangerous, still willing to kill. UA's faculty watched the news with interest. Principal Nezu reviewed Izuku's entrance exam application personally. "A fascinating case," the Chimera mused. "Powerful quirk, proven combat experience, absolute conviction in his methods. He'll either become one of the greatest heroes we've ever produced, or what?" Aizawa asked, looking over Nezu's shoulder at the application, "or he'll force us to redefine what we consider heroic." The UA entrance exam arrived on a clear spring morning. Izuku stood outside the massive gates, surrounded by hundreds of other hopeful students. He ignored the nervous chatter, the excited speculation, the anxiety radiating from every direction. None of it mattered. He wore a simple black shirt and cargo pants, practical and unrestricting. His green hair was messy but clean, and his eyes scanned the crowd with cold assessment. Future classmates, future rivals, future obstacles to overcome, or assets to utilize. "Out of my way, extras!" The shout came from a blonde boy pushing through the crowd. Katsuki Bakugo, Izuku recognized him instantly. They'd attended the same middle school, though they'd never interacted. Bakugo was loud, aggressive, and had a powerful explosion quirk that made him the school's golden child. Bakugo's eyes swept the crowd and landed on Izuku. For a moment, the explosive boy hesitated. He'd heard the rumors about Midoriya, seen the news reports, knew what that magma quirk could do. Their eyes met. Bakugo saw cold indifference. Izuku saw potential strength buried under ego and bluster. Bakugo looked away first, his usual bravado faltering for just a second before he recovered and stomped toward the exam building. Interesting, Izuku thought. The explosive boy has instincts, at least, knows when he's outmatched. The written exam was trivial. Izuku finished in 20 minutes, answering questions about hero history, quirk law, rescue procedures, and tactical scenarios with precise accuracy. He'd studied obsessively for years, memorizing everything he could about the hero industry. The practical exam was where he would make his statement. Present Mike explained the rules to the assembled students. Battle centers filled with villain robots worth different points. 10 minutes to score as many points as possible. Simple, straightforward, designed to test combatability and quick thinking. And remember, listeners, attacking other examinees is prohibited. This is about villain fighting, not PvP. Izuku barely listened. He already knew what he'd do. They were assigned to different battle centers. Izuku walked to his designated area, Battle Center C, with steady, unhurried steps. Around him, other students bounced with nervous energy or tried to strategize last-minute team-ups. Amateurs. The gates opened. Students rushed forward, screaming battle cries and activating quirks. Izuku walked. He didn't run, didn't rush, didn't join the stampede. He simply walked into the battle center, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning for targets. The first robot, a two-pointer, rolled around a corner. Izuku's right hand emerged from his pocket, already transformed into magma. He didn't even break stride as he threw a small magma projectile that punched through the robot's head, melting its circuits and dropping it instantly. 2 points. More robots appeared. 3 one-pointers coming from the left, a 2-pointer from the right, a 3-pointer rumbling down the main street. Izuku stopped walking. He raised both hands skyward, and his arms transformed completely into magma. The temperature around him skyrocketed, causing nearby students to back away in alarm. Ryusei Kazan. His magma fists launched into the air, dozens of them, glowing projectiles that rose like reverse meteors before arcing down across the entire battle center. Each fist was the size of a car, trailing fire and heat as they fell. The robots never stood a chance. Massive magma fists crashed down across the area, crushing and melting everything they touched. 1-pointers exploded under the impact. 2-pointers melted into slag. 3-pointers tried to fire back but were overwhelmed by the sheer number of projectiles. In 30 seconds, Izuku had destroyed more than 40 robots. Other students stared in awe and horror as the battlefield transformed into a volcanic hellscape. Molten metal pooled in the streets. Fires burned everywhere. The air shimmered with heat. Izuku lowered his arms, satisfied. He'd scored more than 100 points in half a minute. The remaining students scrambled to find robots that hadn't been destroyed in his assault. Some stared at him with fear. Others with respect. A few with jealousy. Izuku ignored them all and kept hunting. He found a cluster of 3-pointers in a side street and destroyed them with Dai Funka, his massive magma fist erupting forward like a volcanic cannon. Each hit reduced the robots to molten scrap. When the 0-pointer, the massive obstacle meant to be avoided, emerged from the far end of the battle center, most students ran. Izuku walked toward it. The robot was enormous, easily 20 stories tall, designed to create panic and test students' judgment. Smart students would avoid it. Heroic students would use it as a distraction to save others. Izuku saw it as target practice. He planted his feet, transformed both arms into magma, and launched a barrage of Inugami Gurren attacks. Magma hounds, each 10 feet long, shot forward and slammed to the 0-pointer's legs, torso, and head. The robot's armor was thick, designed to be impervious. It melted like butter. The 0-pointer tried to advance, but Izuku's assault was relentless. Magma attacks tore through its joints, melted its weapons, reduced its circuits to slag. In less than a minute, the massive robot collapsed, crashing to the ground in a heap of molten metal. The remaining students stared in complete silence. Izuku had just destroyed the obstacle everyone else was running from. By himself. In under 60 seconds. The timer buzzed, signaling the end of the exam. Izuku's arms returned to normal. He looked at the destruction around him. Melted robots, burning buildings, molten streets, and felt satisfied. This was just the beginning. In the observation room, UA's faculty watched the feeds in stunned silence. Did he just destroy the zero-pointer? Midnight breathed. He destroyed everything, Cementos corrected. Look at Battle Center C. It's a disaster zone. Present Mike laughed, slightly hysterical. Told you he'd make an impression. The kid turned the whole center into a volcano. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. His point total? Nezu checked the computer. 347 villain points. The next highest scorer in any battle center has 73. Silence. All Might struggled to find words. That's not possible. The exam is designed so even the best students can only score around 80 or 90 points in 10 minutes. Izuku Midoriya isn't like other students, Nezu said calmly. His quirk is absurdly powerful, and he knows how to use it with devastating efficiency. That Ryusei Kazan attack alone destroyed more robots than most students will see in the entire exam. Is he showing off? Vlad King asked. No. Aizawa's voice was certain. He's demonstrating capability. There's a difference. He's telling us exactly what he can do. Recovery Girl frowned. Did anyone notice he didn't save anyone? No rescue points at all, just destruction. Because he didn't need to, Nezu countered. He eliminated every threat so quickly that there was nothing for other students to be saved from. His method of protecting others is preemptive annihilation of villains. All Might shifted uncomfortably. That's not very heroic. Isn't it? Nezu's eyes gleamed. He protected hundreds of civilians on that train by permanently removing a threat. He's never allowed a villain to escape or hurt anyone when he's present. His method is brutal, but it's effective. He kills villains, Aizawa stated flatly. That's going to be a problem. Only if we make it one, Nezu replied. Hero Society has avoided the question of lethal force for decades. Perhaps it's time we addressed it seriously, and perhaps Midoriya is the catalyst we need. The faculty exchanged uncertain looks. They'd accepted Izuku into UA before the exam even started. His application was too impressive to reject. But watching him in action was different from reading reports. This wasn't a student who would smile and shake hands and inspire people with words. This was a weapon pointed at villainy. The question was whether UA could shape that weapon into something the world would accept as heroic. Inko asked, "It's a gray." Izuku returned home to find his mother waiting with dinner and a proud smile. How did it go? Inko asked, though she already knew the answer from the fire in her son's eyes. I demonstrated what I can do. They'll accept me. I never doubted it. She served him rice and fish, prepared just how he liked. The news already picked up some footage. They're calling you the volcanic prodigy. Izuku snorted. Let them call me whatever they want. Names don't matter. Results do. They ate together, and for these few minutes, Izuku allowed himself to relax. His mother's presence was the only thing that softened his edges, the only time he wasn't calculating angles and assessing threats. Mom, when I become a hero, things will be different for us. Better apartment, financial security, no more double shifts. Inko reached across and touched his hand. I don't care about those things, Izuku. I care about you. Just promise me you won't lose yourself in all this power and ambition. I won't lose myself, Izuku assured her. I know exactly who I am, and I know what I'm going to do. Which is, become the strongest hero in the world, make every villain fear my name. Show everyone who ever doubted us what real power looks like. Inko saw the conviction in her son's eyes and knew nothing would stop him. Part of her worried about the path he was walking, the brutal methods, the cold efficiency, the willingness to kill. But another part of her, the part that had endured years of judgment and hardship, felt fierce pride. Her son would never be weak, never be helpless, never let anyone hurt him the way the world had hurt them. Then I'll support you, Inko said softly. Whatever path you choose, I'll be here. I know, Mom. That's why I'll succeed. The acceptance letter arrived a week later, though it was purely a formality. Izuku had scored the highest in UA's entrance exam history. He demonstrated combatability beyond most pro heroes. He was exactly what UA wanted, or at least what they thought they wanted. Izuku read the letter. Congratulations, you've been accepted into Class 1A, and set it aside without ceremony. Now the real work began. UA was just the next step. He'd master everything the school could teach him, surpass every student and teacher, and emerge as the undisputed strongest of his generation. And eventually, inevitably, he'd cross paths with Endeavor. When that day came, Izuku would look his sperm donor in the eyes and show him exactly what he'd thrown away. Not with words or emotional confrontation, just cold, absolute demonstration of power. But that was thinking too far ahead. First, he had to conquer UA. The first day at UA arrived with perfect weather, sunny, warm, promising. Izuku walked through the gates wearing the UA uniform, though he'd modified it slightly. The jacket was open, the shirt beneath it black instead of white. Small rebellions that the dress code technically allowed. He ignored the other students milling around, searching for their classrooms. He already knew where 1A was located. He'd memorized the school's layout weeks ago. The classroom was enormous, designed to accommodate students with various quirk-related needs. Izuku took a seat in the back corner, away from the windows, but with clear sight lines to both doors and the teacher's desk. Old habits. Always know your exits. Always maintain tactical awareness. Other students filtered in, chatting excitedly. Izuku recognized several from the entrance exam. The explosive blonde, Bakugo, entered with his usual aggressive swagger, though he deliberately chose a seat far from Izuku's corner. Smart. A girl with brown hair and pink cheeks bounced into the room, radiating cheerfulness. A boy with glasses and a rigid posture marched to the front row. A half-red, half-white-haired boy entered silently and sat by the window, his mismatched eyes holding the same coldness Izuku recognized in his own. Interesting. The final student to arrive was a green-haired girl who looked around nervously before taking a seat near the middle. Exactly at 8:30 a.m., a yellow sleeping bag on the floor behind the teacher's desk shifted. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. That's not rational. Time is precious. Don't waste mine. The sleeping bag unzipped, revealing a tired-looking man with long black hair and a scarf that seemed to defy gravity. Shota Aizawa, the underground hero Eraserhead. Izuku's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew about Aizawa's quirk, Erasure, the ability to nullify other quirks by looking at them. Dangerous for most students, useless against someone who could kill you in close combat without needing a quirk. I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa. First order of business, put on your gym clothes and meet me outside. The class erupted in confusion. But what about the entrance ceremony? The glasses boy, Ida, according to his introduction, protested. Waste of time. We're here to train heroes, not attend ceremonies. Move. Izuku approved. Finally, someone who prioritized function over tradition. They changed quickly and assembled on one of UA's many training fields. Aizawa stood waiting, looking even more tired in the sunlight. UA is known for its freestyle educational system. That extends to my class. Today, we're doing a quirk assessment test. You'll complete 8 physical tests while using your quirks however you want. Whoever places last in overall scores is judged to have no potential and will be expelled immediately. The class erupted in protests. That's not fair. It's only the first day. Aizawa's eyes gleamed red, his scarf floating. You think natural disasters are fair? Villain attacks? Hostage situations? The world isn't fair. Heroes who can't accept that die young. Now, Bakugo, you placed first in the entrance exam behind one person. Show me your best pitch. Bakugo stepped into the circle, ball in hand, grinning. Easy. He wound up and threw, triggering a massive explosion that launched the ball into the stratosphere. 705.2 meters, Aizawa announced, showing the readout. Students gasped and cheered. Bakugo smirked, proud of himself. Midoriya, you're next. The class went silent. They'd all heard about him, the student who scored over 300 points in the entrance exam, who'd destroyed the zero-pointer, who'd turned Battle Center C into a volcanic wasteland. Izuku walked to the circle, took the ball, and transformed his entire arm into magma. The temperature spiked instantly. Students backed away from the heat. The ball in Izuku's hand began to smoke. Dai Funka! His magma fist expanded, grew massive, became a miniature volcanic eruption. He threw the ball with enough force to create a shockwave that rattled the ground. The ball vanished into the sky, a tiny dot that kept rising, rising, rising. Aizawa checked the readout. His eyebrows rose fractionally, the most emotion he'd shown all day. 3,847.6 meters. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Izuku had thrown the ball more than 5 times farther than Bakugo's explosive launch. And he'd done it casually, without even trying hard. Holy shit, someone whispered. Bakugo's face twisted in rage and disbelief. That's impossible. There's no way. It's perfectly possible when you have a quirk like his. Aizawa cut him off. Midoriya's magma generates immense heat and force. Basic physics. Now everyone else, your turns. The rest of the tests proceeded with similar results. Standing long jump, Izuku used a magma burst to propel himself across the entire sandpit, landing beyond the measurement zone. Grip strength test, his magma hand crushed the device, melting it before it could register his full strength. 50-meter dash, he created magma propulsion behind him and crossed the distance in under 3 seconds. Every single test, Izuku dominated completely. Not barely winning, utterly overwhelming the competition with such a massive gap that it was almost embarrassing. By the time they finished, the rankings were clear. First, Izuku Midoriya. Second, Shoto Todoroki, the half-and-half boy who'd shown impressive ice and fire control. Third, Katsuki Bakugo, seething with rage at being third. 4th through 19th, everyone else. Dead last was a short purple-haired boy named Mineta, whose quirk involved sticky balls. The class waited nervously for Aizawa to expel him. The expulsion was a logical ruse to make you give your best effort, Aizawa said flatly. The class erupted in relieved chatter, all except Izuku, who'd known from the start. Expelling students on day 1 would be irrational. There'd been no time to assess actual potential versus raw quirk power. However, Aizawa continued, his eyes finding Izuku. Midoriya, stay behind. Everyone else is dismissed. The class filed away, shooting curious glances at Izuku. He remained still, expression neutral, waiting for whatever lecture was coming. When they were alone, Aizawa's tired eyes studied him carefully. You held back. It wasn't a question. Yes, Izuku confirmed. Why? Because demonstrating my full capabilities on day 1 would be tactically unsound. Better to let potential enemies underestimate me. We're not training you to fight enemies. We're training you to be a hero. The difference is semantic. Villains are enemies. I fight them. Therefore, I need tactical advantages. Aizawa sighed. You killed 3 villains when you were 4. Another on a train 3 weeks ago. Your entrance exam showed you're willing to use lethal force without hesitation. That's going to be a problem. Only if you make it one, Izuku echoed Nezu's words, though he didn't know the principal had said the same thing. Heroes don't kill, Midoriya. Weak heroes don't. Strong heroes do what's necessary. That's not. Aizawa stopped, rubbed his eyes. Listen, I'm not here to lecture you on morality. You're old enough to make your own choices, but UA has rules and society has laws. You can't just kill every villain you encounter. I can if they threaten innocent lives. Self-defense law doesn't cover preemptive execution. Then the law is flawed. They stared at each other, neither backing down. Finally, Aizawa spoke. You're going to be a problem student, I can already tell, but you're also potentially the strongest hero of your generation. So I'm going to make you a deal. While you're at UA, you follow our rules. No killing during training exercises, no lethal force against classmates, and if we encounter real villains, you let the pro heroes handle it unless lives are in immediate danger. And if lives are in immediate danger, then you do whatever is necessary to protect them. I'm not going to handcuff you when real danger appears, but you need to learn restraint, control, and judgment about when lethal force is truly required. Izuku considered this. It wasn't ideal, but it was reasonable. Acceptable. Good. Now get out of here. And Midoriya, don't make me regret not expelling you. Izuku allowed himself a small smile. You won't. The next few weeks at UA established Izuku's position in the class hierarchy. He was unquestionably the strongest. No one came close. Even Todoroki, with his powerful ice and fire quirk, couldn't match Izuku's raw destructive potential. But power wasn't the only factor. Izuku remained distant from his classmates. He didn't join their lunch groups, didn't participate in casual conversations, didn't respond to attempts at friendship. The brown-haired girl, Uraraka, tried to befriend him after seeing him sit alone at lunch. Hey Midoriya, mind if I sit here? I do, actually. Her cheerful expression faltered. Oh, okay. Maybe another time? Unlikely. She left, hurt and confused. Other students stopped trying after that. Bakugo kept his distance, his pride wounded by being so thoroughly outclassed. He'd gone from being the strongest in middle school to barely top 3 at UA, and the gap between him and Izuku was vast. Todoroki observed Izuku with quiet intensity, recognizing a similar coldness in him. They didn't speak, but there was a mutual understanding between them. Both were here for power, not friendship. Ida tried to engage Izuku in discussions about hero ethics and proper conduct. Izuku tolerated him for about 30 seconds before walking away mid-sentence. The only person Izuku showed any patience toward was a green-haired girl named Tsuyu Asui, and only because she had the sense not to pry into his business. She made one observation. "You're very strong, Midoriya." And when he nodded acknowledgement, she left him alone. Classes proceeded. Izuku excelled academically, his years of obsessive study paying off. Hero basic training with All Might was interesting, though the symbol of peace's constant smiling grated on Izuku's nerves. All Might had approached him after class one day. "Young Midoriya, I've been wanting to talk to you about... I'm not interested in One for All." All Might froze, his smile faltering. "How did you..." "I'm observant. Your fight with All for One 9 years ago left you injured. Your time limit decreases annually. You're looking for a successor. You've been watching me during training. Simple deduction." The symbol of peace deflated, literally his muscular form shrinking to his true skeletal appearance. Yes, you're correct. I think you have the potential to be the next symbol of peace." "I don't want to be the next symbol of peace. I don't want your quirk. I don't need it." "Young man, One for All is a powerful quirk, yes, but it's your quirk, your legacy. I'm building my own. My magma powers are more than enough to accomplish everything I need." All Might looked hurt. "It's not just about power. It's about the symbol, the hope you represent to people. I don't need people's hope. I need their villains dead." "That's not what heroism. That's exactly what heroism should be. You smile and inspire people, and that's fine. It works for you. But me, I'll inspire a different kind of hope. The hope that villains will be completely permanently removed from society. No escape, no second chances, just absolute justice." All Might stared at this teenager who spoke with such conviction about killing. "You sound like a vigilante, not a hero." "I sound like someone who takes the job seriously. Capture and rehabilitation has a 43% recidivism rate for villains. My method has a 0% recidivism rate. Because dead men can't reoffend." "Exactly." All Might sighed, his thin form sagging. "I can't condone your methods, young Midoriya, but I can't deny your strength either. I just hope UA can teach you there's more to being a hero than power and punishment." "UA can try." The conversation ended there. All Might had approached several other students after that. Green-haired Midoriya was off the table, but perhaps the earnest Ida, or the determined Uraraka, or even the powerful Todoroki might be worthy successors. Izuku didn't care. He didn't need All Might's legacy. He was building his own. The USJ incident came 3 weeks into the semester. Class 1A boarded buses to the unforeseen simulation joint, a massive training facility designed to practice rescue scenarios. Aizawa explained they'd be working with the Space Hero 13 on disaster relief training. Izuku sat in the back of the bus, ignoring the chatter around him. Rescue training was important. He understood that protecting civilians was a core hero function. But it wasn't his specialty. His specialty was removing the threats that made rescue necessary. They arrived at the USJ, a massive domed facility with different disaster zones: landslide, fire, flood, downpour, and more. 13 greeted them enthusiastically, explaining the importance of using quirks to save rather than harm. Izuku tuned out the speech. He'd heard it before. Use power responsibly. Quirks can hurt people. Be careful. He was always careful. Careful to completely annihilate threats before they could hurt anyone. That's when the lights flickered. A black portal opened in the central plaza, and dozens of villains poured through. Aizawa's eyes widened. 13. Protect the students. More villains emerged. Dozens became hundreds. A massive muscular creature with its brain exposed, a Nomu, Izuku recognized from hero reports, stood at the center alongside a pale-haired man scratching at his neck. "We're the League of Villains," the pale man, Shigaraki, announced. "We've come to kill All Might." The class erupted in panic. 13 began ushering students toward the exit, but the black portal, a villain named Kurogiri, blocked their path. "I'm afraid we can't let you leave." Kurogiri said calmly. We've prepared a greeting for each of you. The portal expanded, swallowing students and scattering them across the different disaster zones. Izuku felt the portal's pull and didn't resist. Let them separate him. Let them think they had an advantage. He'd show them what a real disaster looked like. Izuku materialized in the landslide zone, a rocky area with unstable terrain designed to practice rescue in earthquake scenarios. 20 villains surrounded him, various quirks activated, thinking they had an easy target. One student, alone, outnumbered. They were about to learn a very painful lesson. Just one brat? A villain with stone fists laughed. This'll be easy. Izuku looked at them with cold green eyes. The temperature began to rise. Villains. You've made 2 mistakes today. First, you attacked a school full of heroes in training. Second, you separated me from people I'd need to protect. His body began to glow. Now there's no one to save you from me. Izuku transformed completely. His entire body became magma, clothes burning away as he became a humanoid figure of molten rock and fire. Heat radiated from him in waves, causing the nearest villains to stumble backward. What the hell is that? Someone screamed. Doesn't matter. Rush him. They charged. Izuku raised his arms. Ryusei Kazan. Magma fists erupted from his body, dozens of them, launching skyward before raining down across the landslide zone. Each fist was the size of a person, glowing white-hot, moving with lethal velocity. The villains didn't stand a chance. Magma fists crashed down like meteors, crushing and melting everything they touched. Villains screamed as they were engulfed, their quirks offering no protection against 2,000-degree heat. Stone skin melted, metal constructs vaporized, flesh and bone became ash. In 30 seconds, the landslide zone became a graveyard. 20 villains entered, none left alive. Izuku stood in the center of the carnage, his magma form glowing against the scorched landscape. Bodies, what remained of them, lay cooling around him. Weak, he said to no one. He began moving toward the central plaza. If these were the League of Villains, their leader would be there. And Izuku intended to end this invasion permanently. In the flood zone, Tsuyu Asui and Mineta faced a group of aquatic villains. They were struggling, using Tsuyu's swimming ability to avoid attacks, but unable to fight back effectively. We're gonna die, Mineta wailed. Stay calm, Tsuyu said, though she was scared too. That's when the water began to boil. A magma projectile shot through the flood zone like a torpedo, superheating the water instantly. The aquatic villains screamed as their environment became lethal, skin blistering, quirks failing. Izuku emerged from the water on a platform of hardened magma, his body still partially transformed, eyes scanning for more threats. Midoriya! Tsuyu gasped. He looked at them, confirmed they were alive, and nodded once. Stay there, I'm ending this. Then he was gone, moving toward the central plaza with single-minded purpose. In the fire zone, Todoroki had frozen a group of villains solid. He sensed something and turned to see Izuku approaching, magma still dripping from his shoulders. Midoriya. Todoroki. They assessed each other. Both were covered in evidence of combat. Both were completely unharmed. How many? Todoroki asked. 20 in the landslide zone, 6 in the flood zone. You? 15 here. Izuku nodded. The leaders are in the central plaza. We should... An explosion rocked the facility. They turned to see Bakugo emerging from the downpour zone, smoking and grinning, with several unconscious villains behind him. Weaklings. Bakugo noticed Izuku and Todoroki. His grin faded. You two? How many did you kill? All of them, Izuku said without emotion. Bakugo's eye twitched. He'd knocked his opponents unconscious. These two had executed theirs. We need to regroup, Todoroki said. Aizawa's fighting that Nomu creature. He can't win alone. Then let's not waste time, Izuku replied. The 3 strongest students of Class 1A moved toward the central plaza, an unconscious alliance formed by necessity. I thought I'm going to suffering lures. Aizawa was losing. Eraserhead was an excellent underground hero, skilled in combat, tactical, efficient, but the Nomu was designed specifically to counter heroes like him. Shock absorption meant his strikes did nothing. Regeneration meant injury didn't matter. And super strength meant every hit the Nomu landed was potentially fatal. Aizawa's quirk was useless. The Nomu had multiple quirks and Arashir could only nullify one at a time. The Nomu's fist crashed into Aizawa's side, shattering ribs. The teacher crashed into the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Sensei! Students who'd regrouped at the entrance screamed. Shigaraki laughed, scratching at his neck frantically. This is boring. Where's All Might? We came here to kill him, and he's not even here. NPCs are so useless. Perhaps we should kill the students to draw him out, Kurogiri suggested. Good idea. Start with Dai Funka. A massive magma fist erupted from the side, moving with devastating speed. It slammed into the Nomu's torso with enough force to send the creature flying across the plaza. Shigaraki and Kurogiri turned to see 3 students approaching. Izuku Midoriya, body partially transformed into magma, eyes cold as ice. Shoto Todoroki, ice forming on one side, fire on the other, expression emotionless. Katsuki Bakugo, hands smoking with explosions, grin feral and eager. Students? Shigaraki tilted his head. But you were supposed to be scattered. Separated. Easy prey. Your weak villains couldn't hold us, Todoroki stated. They couldn't hold anyone, Bakugo added. They're all dead or unconscious. Shigaraki's scratching intensified. All of them? But there were over 100. There were, Izuku confirmed. Now there aren't. Kurogiri's misty form rippled. Impossible. Even pro-heroes couldn't. We're not normal students. Izuku's temperature rose, heat waves distorting the air around him, and you made a fatal mistake invading this school. The Nomu pulled itself from the crater where Izuku's attack had sent it. Its crushed torso regenerated rapidly, exposing brain and muscle before skin reformed. Shigaraki laughed. Oh, this is interesting. The NPCs have some fight in them. Fine, Nomu. Kill them all. The creature charged. Izuku met it head-on. Mego! His magma fist, shaped like a hound's head, slammed into the Nomu's chest with devastating force. The creature's shock absorption quirk activated, but magma didn't just hit, it melted. The Nomu's flesh began to vaporize where Izuku's fist connected. Regeneration fought against destruction, creating a horrific cycle of flesh forming and burning away. Bakugo! Todoroki! Bind it! Todoroki didn't question the order. Ice erupted from the ground, freezing the Nomu's legs. Bakugo followed up with explosion-propelled strikes to its arms, forcing them out to the sides. The creature was immobilized for exactly 3 seconds. Izuku needed 2. His entire body transformed into magma. He grabbed the Nomu's head with both hands, and his temperature skyrocketed beyond anything he'd shown before. 3,000 degrees. 4,000. 5,000. The Nomu's regeneration quirk couldn't keep up. Its exposed brain began to boil, neurons dying faster than they could repair. Its shock absorption meant nothing against sustained heat that exceeded the surface of the sun. The creature screamed, a horrible, inhuman sound, as Izuku literally melted its brain from the inside out. No! Shigaraki shrieked. That's impossible. Nomu was designed to fight All Might. You're just a student. You can't. The Nomu collapsed. Dead. Actually, permanently dead. Its regeneration quirk failed, its brain reduced to bubbling slag inside its skull. Izuku's hands returned to normal. He looked at Shigaraki with cold contempt. Your creature was strong, but heat beats regeneration. Physics beats quirks. Kurogiri created a portal. We need to retreat. Shigaraki, we failed. No, I'm not leaving until... Ryusei Kazan. Izuku's arms transformed and magma fists erupted into the air. Dozens of them, hundreds of them, all targeted at the central plaza. Shigaraki's eyes widened behind his hand mask. Kurogiri, get us out of here! The portal expanded, swallowing both villains just as magma meteors began to rain down. The central plaza became hell. Magma fists crashed down everywhere, melting the ground, destroying the fountain, turning the USJ's centerpiece into a volcanic crater. Any remaining villains who hadn't fled were caught in the bombardment, reduced to ash and slag. When the attack ended, the USJ was silent except for the crackling of cooling magma. Izuku stood at the center of the destruction, breathing normally, body returned to human form. Around him, his classmates stared in awe and terror. He just killed the League of Villains' strongest weapon. He'd forced their leader to retreat. He'd turned the USJ into a graveyard for over 100 villains, and he'd done it as a first-year student. Todoroki and Bakugo looked at him with new understanding. They'd known he was strong. They hadn't known he was this strong. Sensei! Izuku's voice cut through the silence. He walked to where Aizawa lay broken and bleeding. He needs immediate medical attention. The other students snapped into action. Ida ran for help. 13 activated emergency protocols. Uraraka used her quirk to make Aizawa weightless for easier transport. Izuku watched them work, then looked at the crater he'd created. The Nomu's melted corpse lay at its center, barely recognizable as having once been alive. Good. One less villain in the world. All Might arrived 10 minutes later, ready to fight, only to find the battle over. He stared at the carnage, melted bodies, scorched earth, a massive crater where the central plaza used to be, and couldn't process what he was seeing. Young Midoriya, did you do this? Izuku stood near the entrance with his classmates, arms crossed, expression neutral. Yes. The villains? Dead. Most of them. The leaders escaped through a portal quirk. I destroyed their Nomu and forced them to retreat. All Might looked at the cooling body of the creature that had been designed to kill him, designed to be his ultimate counter, and a student had melted it. You killed them all? Yes. Young man, that's not. They invaded a school. They tried to kill students and teachers. They deserved death, and I delivered it. We can debate morality later. Right now, Aizawa needs medical attention. All Might wanted to argue, wanted to lecture, and wanted to explain why killing was wrong even when facing villains. But he looked at the injured teacher, the traumatized students, and the undeniable fact that Midoriya had saved them all. He'd saved them by being willing to do what All Might wouldn't. Kill. We'll talk about this later, All Might said finally. Looking forward to it, Izuku replied with zero sincerity. The aftermath of the USJ incident dominated news for weeks. League of Villains attacks UA. Student kills dozens in self-defense. Is Izuku Midoriya a hero or a vigilante? The Hero Public Safety Commission investigated. They interviewed students, examined evidence, analyzed the magma-melted corpses. Their conclusion: Izuku Midoriya had acted in defense of his classmates and teacher. The villains had attacked first with lethal intent. Midoriya's response, while extreme, was legally justified under self-defense law. No charges, no punishment, full clearance. But public opinion was divided. Half the population saw Izuku as a hero who'd done what was necessary. He'd protected his classmates, killed a dangerous creature, and sent a message to villains everywhere: attack UA and die. The other half saw him as dangerous, unstable, too willing to kill. They demanded restrictions on his quirk usage, psychological evaluation, and closer monitoring. Izuku ignored all of it. He continued training, continued studying, continued growing stronger. The League of Villains had escaped, but they'd learned a valuable lesson. Izuku Midoriya was not someone to underestimate. Shigaraki Tamaki sat in the League's backup hideout, scratching at his neck frantically, replaying the USJ attack in his mind. That student, that magma student, he killed Nomu. Our strongest weapon, just melted it like it was nothing. He's dangerous, Kurogiri agreed. We should avoid him in the future. No. Shigaraki's scratching stopped. We should recruit him, someone that powerful, that willing to kill. He thinks like a villain. Maybe he just doesn't know it yet. He calls himself a hero. Heroes don't kill dozens of people without hesitation. That's not heroic. That's something else. Kurogiri said nothing. His master, All for One, had already expressed interest in Izuku Midoriya. A boy with that much power and that little mercy could be useful. Or he could become a threat worse than All Might. Only time would tell which. At UA, the faculty held an emergency meeting. Midoriya's actions at the USJ were effective, Nezu stated calmly. He neutralized the Nomu, protected his classmates, and forced the League to retreat. By every tactical measure, he succeeded. He also killed over 50 people, Vlad King countered. 50 villains, Aizawa corrected, his body still bandaged from his injuries. There's a difference, and I was there. I saw what that Nomu could do. Midoriya's the only one who could have stopped it. By melting its brain, Midnight said quietly. Would you prefer it killed me instead? Aizawa asked bluntly, because that's what would have happened if Midoriya hadn't intervened. Silence. All Might shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I understand the tactical necessity, but the philosophical implications can wait, Nezu interrupted. Right now, we need to decide how to handle Midoriya moving forward. He's proven he's immensely powerful and effective, but his methods are controversial. Do we restrict him, expel him, or do we try to shape him into something society will accept? We can't expel our strongest student, Cemento said practically. Not when villains are actively targeting UA. We need him. Agreed, Aizawa said. Midoriya stays, but we need to work with him on restraint, on choosing when lethal force is truly necessary versus when capture is viable. Can he learn restraint? Recovery Girl asked. He's been using lethal force since he was 4 years old. It's ingrained in him. He's also intelligent and rational, Nezu countered. He understands tactical thinking. If we can frame restraint as a tactical advantage rather than a moral imperative, he might listen. All Might sighed. I still believe there's a better way. Heroism should inspire hope, not fear. Perhaps, Nezu said, but Midoriya inspires a different kind of hope, the hope that villains will face absolute justice. That might be exactly what hero society needs right now. The meeting continued late into the night, but the conclusion was clear. Izuku Midoriya would remain at UA. They would train him, guide him, and try to shape his brutal methods into something the public would accept. Because whether they liked it or not, Izuku Midoriya was the future of heroism, and that future burned with the heat of magma. Izuku sat in his apartment that evening, his mother making tea in the kitchen. The news played on their small TV, showing footage of the USJ aftermath. Analysts debated his actions. Heroes gave their opinions. The public argued about whether he was a hero or a monster. Izuku felt nothing listening to them. Their opinions didn't matter. Izuku? Inko set a cup of tea in front of him. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. You killed a lot of people today. I killed a lot of villains today, he corrected gently. There's a difference. Inko sat beside him, her small hand finding his. I know you did what you thought was right, and I know you protected your classmates. I'm proud of you for that. But I worry sometimes about what this path is doing to you. This path is making me strong, making me capable, making me into the hero I need to be. But at what cost? Izuku looked at his mother, the only person in the world he truly cared about, and softened slightly. I'm not going to become a monster, Mom. I know the difference between justice and cruelty. I kill villains because they threaten innocent people, not because I enjoy it. There's a line, and I won't cross it. Promise me? Inko's eyes were wet with unshed tears. I promise. You're my anchor, Mom. As long as I have you, I'll never lose myself. They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking tea and watching the news. Tomorrow, Izuku would return to UA. He'd face questions, scrutiny, and probably more lectures from All Might about heroic ideals. But tonight, he was just a son having tea with his mother. The world could wait. Over the following weeks, UA implemented new security measures. The USJ attack had exposed vulnerabilities they needed to address. For Class 1A, life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after a villain invasion. Izuku's status in the class shifted. Before, he'd been the strong, distant student everyone avoided. After the USJ, he became the strong, distant, terrifying student everyone definitely avoided. Except for a few. Todoroki approached him one day during lunch. Midoriya, can we talk? Izuku looked up from his food. His mother had packed it, so he actually cared about eating it. About? Your quirk? Your methods? Your philosophy? Why? Todoroki sat without invitation. Because I think we're similar. We both have powerful quirks. We both use them without hesitation. We both don't care much about making friends. And I want to understand how you can be so certain, so willing to kill without doubt or regret. Izuku studied Todoroki carefully. The boy had his own demons. That was clear from the scar over his eye, the way he refused to use his fire side, the cold distance he maintained from everyone. I can be certain because my goal is clear, Izuku said finally. Protect innocent people by removing threats permanently. Every villain I kill is one that can never hurt anyone again. The math is simple. It's not that simple for me. Todoroki admitted quietly. Because you're conflicted about your quirk, your father's fire versus your mother's ice, you hate one side of yourself. Todoroki's eyes widened. How did you... Your scar is from boiling water, not fire. Your mother gave it to you, probably during a breakdown. Your father is Endeavor, the #2 hero obsessed with surpassing all might. He's been training you since childhood, hasn't he? Quirk marriage, creating the perfect heir. Todoroki stared at Izuku in shock. You figured all that out from observation? It's obvious if you know what to look for, and I know Endeavor very well. You've met my father? He's my father too. Silence. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Todoroki processed this information, his heterochromatic eyes widening in realization. We're brothers? Half-brothers, same father, different mothers. He got my mom pregnant during a one-night stand, then abandoned her when he found out her quirk was too weak to produce the heir he wanted. He told her to get rid of me. She refused. He walked away and never looked back. Todoroki's ice side began to frost unconsciously. That bastard. That absolute bastard. Indeed. So you see, Todoroki, I understand having a complicated relationship with Endeavor. But unlike you, I don't let it affect how I use my power. My quirk isn't his, it's mine. What I do with it is my choice, not his legacy. Is that why you use fire so freely? To prove you're not afraid of it? I use magma because it's effective. If it happened to come from Endeavor's genetics, that's irrelevant. The power is mine now. Todoroki looked down at his hands, one forming ice, one capable of fire. I swore I'd never use his fire, that I'd become the #1 hero using only my mother's ice, to reject him completely. That's stupid, Izuku said bluntly. Excuse me? You're handicapping yourself out of spite. You're letting him control you by dictating what you won't use. True rejection would be using both sides of your quirk however you wanted, proving you're stronger than him despite his training, not because of it. Todoroki sat back, stunned. No one had ever framed it that way before. I never thought of it like that. Most people don't think strategically about their emotions. They just react. Izuku finished his lunch. Do what you want with your quirk, Todoroki, but don't waste potential out of spite. That's letting Endeavor win. Izuku stood to leave, but Todoroki's voice stopped him. Midoriya, does he know about you? Endeavor? No. Mom never told him my name or where we lived. As far as he knows, she got rid of me like he demanded. Are you going to tell him? Izuku's smile was cold. Eventually. When I'm strong enough that he can't ignore me, when I've surpassed him so completely that he has to acknowledge what he threw away. Then I'll look him in the eye and let him know exactly who I am. What will you do then? Nothing. Just let him live with the knowledge that his worthless son became greater than he ever could be. That's punishment enough. Todoroki watched his half-brother walk away, mind reeling from the revelations. They shared a father. They shared his abandonment. They shared his fire. But Izuku had taken that legacy and made it his own, while Todoroki was still shackled by it. Maybe it was time to change that. The sports festival was announced 2 weeks after the USJ attack. The UA Sports Festival is Japan's biggest event, midnight announced to Class 1A. It's where students showcase their abilities to the entire nation, where pro heroes scout for sidekicks and future hires, where you prove you're worthy of being called heroes. The class erupted in excited chatter. This was their chance to shine, to show the world what they could do. Izuku listened with mild interest. A tournament to showcase abilities, a public platform to demonstrate power, an opportunity to send a message to every villain watching. This could be useful. The festival is in 3 weeks, Midnight continued. Train hard, study your opponents, and prepare to give it everything you've got. This is your moment to shine. Bakugo slammed his hand on his desk. I'm gonna win this whole damn thing. Every one of you extras better bring your A game because I'm not holding back. You'll have to get through me first, Todoroki said quietly. Bakugo's glare shifted to him. You think your half-and-half quirk is enough to beat me? I know it is. The tension in the room spiked. Other students watched nervously, waiting for the explosive confrontation. Izuku stood and walked toward the door. Midoriya, Ida called. Aren't you going to make a declaration as well? Izuku paused at the doorway, looking back at his classmates. His green eyes swept across them, Bakugo with his rage, Todoroki with his cold determination, Uraraka with her hopeful enthusiasm, Ida with his rigid honor. I don't need to declare anything. Everyone here knows I'm going to win. The only question is how badly you'll lose. He left without another word, leaving the class in stunned silence. Bakugo's hands sparked. That arrogant bastard. He's not wrong, though, Kirishima said nervously. Did you see what he did at the USJ? He killed that Nomu thing. I don't think any of us can beat him. Speak for yourself, Bakugo snarled, but even he knew the truth. Midoriya was on a different level. The sports festival would just make it obvious to the entire world. 3 weeks passed in intense training. Students pushed themselves to new limits, developing new techniques and strategies. Todoroki practiced combining his ice and fire, tentatively exploring his father's legacy. Bakugo refined his explosions, seeking the power to match Izuku. Uraraka trained her zero-gravity quirk, hoping to overcome her weight limit. Izuku trained differently. He'd already mastered his basic techniques. Daifunka, Inugami Guren, Meigo, Ryusei Kazan, these were his foundation. Now he focused on refinement, on precision, on controlling his power with surgical accuracy. He could melt a specific bolt in a machine without damaging surrounding parts. He could raise the temperature in a specific area by exact degrees. He could shape magma into complex constructs that held their form for extended periods. Power without control was just destruction. Izuku wanted dominance. He also studied his potential opponents. Bakugo's explosions were powerful but predictable. Todoroki's ice was versatile, but his fire was underdeveloped. Ida's speed was impressive, but he lacked ranged options. Uraraka's quirk was interesting, but required touch. None of them posed a real threat. The sports festival would be a demonstration, not a challenge. The day of the festival arrived with perfect weather and a stadium packed with thousands of spectators. Class 1A assembled in their waiting room, nervous energy filling the air. This was it, their chance to show the world what UA students could do. Todoroki approached Izuku before they took the field. "Midoriya, I'm going to beat you today." Izuku looked at his half-brother with mild interest. "You've been training your fire side." "You were right. Handicapping myself out of spite was letting him win, so I'm using everything I have." "Good. That means this might actually be interesting." The announcement came for students to take the field. They walked out into the stadium, greeted by roaring crowds and camera flashes. The entire nation was watching. President Mike's voice boomed across the stadium. "Welcome to the UA Sports Festival. Let's give it up for our first-year students." The crowd went wild. Midnight stepped onto the stage, her revealing hero costume drawing wolf whistles that she ignored. "Silence, please. Before we begin, we have an opening ceremony. The student who placed first in the entrance exam will give the pledge." Every eye turned to Izuku. He walked to the stage, stepped up to the microphone, and looked out at thousands of people waiting for an inspirational speech. "I'm going to win," he said simply. That was it. 4 words. No inspiration, no motivation, no humble gratitude for the opportunity, just cold, absolute certainty. The crowd erupted, half cheering his confidence, half booing his arrogance. Izuku didn't care. He'd stated a fact, not a boast. "Well then," President Mike laughed. "That's certainly direct. Let's get started with our first event, the obstacle race." The rules were explained. A 4-kilometer course around the stadium with various obstacles. First place gets 10 points, second gets 6, third gets 3, and everyone else gets participation points based on finishing order. On your marks, get set, go! The starting signal fired, and hundreds of students rushed forward, crowding the narrow entrance. Izuku walked. He didn't rush, didn't fight for position, didn't try to get ahead. He simply walked through the crowd like his body heating up as he approached the bottleneck. Students near him began to sweat, backing away from the heat. Izuku's temperature rose higher, and those who didn't move fast enough felt their skin start to blister. A path cleared instantly. Izuku walked through without resistance, students scrambling to get away from him. The first obstacle appeared. Massive robots. The same 0-pointers from the entrance exam. They were supposed to block the path that forced students to fight or find ways around. Izuku raised one hand. Daifunka. His magma fist expanded and launched forward, obliterating the closest robot. He fired again and again, each blast destroying a 0-pointer and melting through its metal frame. By the time he reached the obstacle, there was a clear path of molten slag. He walked through. The second obstacle was the fall, a massive chasm crossed by narrow pillars and tight ropes. Students were supposed to carefully navigate across, testing their balance and nerves. Izuku created a bridge of hardened magma and walked across it like it was a sidewalk. The third obstacle was a minefield. Students had to navigate through without triggering explosions. Izuku's body heat detonated every mine within 10 feet of him. He walked through the explosions like they were fireworks, completely unharmed. He crossed the finish line first, barely breathing hard, without a scratch on him. The crowd was silent for a moment, processing what they'd just seen. Then they erupted in cheers and shocked commentary. "He didn't even try," President Mick screamed. Izuku Midoriya just walked through the entire obstacle course like it was a casual stroll. In the stands, pro heroes watched with fascination and concern. That level of quirk control, Kamui Woods breathed. That confidence, Mount Lady added. That brutality. Edgeshot finished. Endeavor sat in the VIP section, watching with calculating eyes. This Midoriya student was impressive. Incredibly so. If he'd had a son with that much power and control, he didn't even notice the irony. Todoroki crossed the finish line second, using ice to freeze obstacles and create his own path. Bakugo exploded his way to third place. The rest of Class 1A filtered in over the next several minutes. When all students had finished, Midnight announced the next event, the Cavalry Battle. Teams of 4, 1 rider, and 3 supporters. Points distributed based on finishing position in the first event. Steal headbands from other teams to accumulate points. And Izuku, as first place, was worth 10 million points. You have 15 minutes to form teams. Go! Every student in the stadium immediately looked at Izuku, seeing those 10 million points as their ticket to victory. Izuku looked back at them with cold indifference. Let them try. Izuku stood alone as students scrambled to form teams. Todoroki approached. Midoriya, team up with me. Why? Because we're brothers. Because together we'd be unstoppable. Because neither of us needs anyone else. Izuku considered this. Todoroki was strong, competent, and wouldn't require emotional management. A logical choice. Fine. But I'm the rider, obviously. Ida approached next. Midoriya, I would be honored to be on your team, Zihak. My quirk would provide excellent mobility. No, Izuku said flatly, but you're too rigid, too bound by rules. I need people who can adapt. He looked past Ida to where a pink-skinned girl stood alone. You, Ashido, join my team. Mina Ashido looked surprised. Me? But my acid quirk isn't that powerful. Your acid can melt through defenses and create barriers. That's useful. You're in. Finally, Izuku's eyes landed on Tokoyami. Dark Shadow is versatile. You're in too. Fumikage Tokoyami blinked. You want me on your team? I want your quirk on my team. Your personality is irrelevant. So the team formed. Izuku as the rider, Todoroki at the front, Ashido on the left, Tokoyami on the right. An unusual combination, but Izuku saw the strategic value. Other teams formed quickly. Bakugo assembled a team focused on offense. Ida joined with Midoriya's rejected offer. Various other combinations came together. Time's up. Teams, get in position. Izuku's team took their formation. Todoroki's ice would provide defense and mobility. Ashido's acid would counter anyone who got too close. Tokoyami's dark shadow would defend from aerial attacks. And Izuku would rain fire on anyone who approached. Start! Every team immediately charged at Izuku. 10 million points. The temptation was too great to resist. Todoroki created an ice wall blocking the initial rush. Ashido, acid. Mina sprayed acid, melting paths through the approaching teams. Dark Shadow lashed out, knocking away students who got too close. And Izuku raised his hands. Ryusei Kazan. Small magma fists. Not the massive ones from the USJ, but controlled projectiles launched into the air and rained down on approaching teams. Students scattered, dodging the attacks, their formations breaking. Don't let up, Bakugo screamed, pushing his team forward. That 10 million is mine. His team charged through the magma rain, Bakugo's explosions deflecting the smaller projectiles. They got within range. Izuku's hand shot out, grabbing Bakugo's headband in one smooth motion. Too slow. Bakugo's team stumbled as their points disappeared. Damn it! Izuku's team moved with coordinated precision. Todoroki's ice created paths and barriers. Ashido's acid deterred close approaches. Dark Shadow defended from above, and Izuku collected headbands from anyone who got near. Within 5 minutes, Izuku's team had accumulated nearly 15 million points. Other teams realized direct assault was impossible and began targeting each other, trying to accumulate enough points to challenge Izuku's team indirectly. Time! The cavalry battle ended. Midnight checked the scores. First place, Team Midoriya with 15,300,000 points. Second place, Team Todoroki. Wait, Todoroki was on Midoriya's team. Second place, Team Bakugo with 2 million points. Third and fourth places qualify for the final round. The crowd cheered. Izuku's team had dominated so completely that second place barely had a fraction of their points. We have a 15-minute break before the final event. Stay tuned. In the waiting room, Izuku sat alone, reviewing the competition. All Might appeared, his skeletal form visible to Izuku's trained eyes despite the illusion of muscles. Young Midoriya, you're dominating this festival. Yes. I wanted to talk to you about your methods, the way you approached the cavalry battle. Was effective, strategic, dominant. It was also isolating. You didn't give other students a chance to shine to show their potential to the scouts watching. Izuku looked at All Might with cold eyes. That's not my problem. This is a competition, not a charity. If they wanted to shine, they should have been stronger. But heroism isn't just about being the strongest. Yes, it is. Everything else is secondary. Inspirational speeches don't stop villains. Smiles don't protect civilians. Power does. Strength does. The ability to completely dominate threats before they can hurt anyone. All Might sighed. You sound more like a weapon than a hero. Good. That's exactly what villains should see when they look at me. A weapon pointed at their throats. And what about the people you're supposed to protect? What do they see? Safety. Because I remove every threat permanently. They stared at each other, fundamental philosophies clashing. I can't change your mind, can I? All Might asked quietly. No, because I'm right. All Might left without another word. Somewhere, Nana Shimura's descendant was walking a path she would never have approved of, and All Might had no idea how to stop it. The final event was announced. The tournament. Single elimination, one-on-one battles, showcasing individual skill to the nation. The bracket was revealed. Izuku versus Hatsume, a support course student. Todoroki versus Sero Bakugo versus Uraraka Ida versus Shiozaki, and several other matchups. Izuku looked at his first opponent, Mei Hatsume, a girl with pink hair and goggles who was apparently using the tournament to showcase her support items. This would be quick. The first match, Midoriya versus Hatsume. Mei bounced into the arena, covered in support items, talking rapidly about her babies and how she'd use this opportunity to show them off to the support companies watching. This rocket booster can achieve speeds of Izuku's magma fist grabbed her shirt and threw her out of bounds in one motion. Winner, Midoriya. The crowd laughed. The entire match had lasted 3 seconds. Mei looked confused from where she'd landed outside the arena. But I didn't get to show my items. Should have been faster, Izuku said, walking off the stage. The tournament continued. Todoroki dominated his match with overwhelming ice. Bakugo fought Uraraka in a brutal battle that showcased both their determination, ultimately winning. Ida's speed overwhelmed Shiozaki. The quarterfinals approached. Izuku versus Ida, Todoroki versus Bakugo. The winner of each would face off in the finals. Izuku versus Ida was a study in contrasts. Ida was fast, honorable, strategic. He'd studied Izuku's quirk, knew that close combat was suicide, and planned to use hit-and-run tactics. Midoriya! I respect your strength, but I won't give up without a fight. I wouldn't expect you to. Begin. Ida activated his Recipro Burst, achieving incredible speed. He circled Izuku, looking for an opening, any weakness in the magma user's defense. Izuku stood still and raised the temperature around himself. The air shimmered with heat. The concrete beneath his feet began to glow. Anyone within 20 feet would start to burn. Ida tried to close in, but the heat was too intense. His engines began to overheat. His skin reddened from proximity. I can't get close enough. That's the point. Izuku raised one hand. Inugami Guren. A magma hound shot forward, moving faster than Ida could react. The construct slammed into his chest, controlled temperature, not lethal, but devastating, and sent him flying out of bounds. Winner Midoriya. The match had lasted 20 seconds. Recovery Girl rushed to treat Ida's burns while the crowd murmured in awe and concern. He didn't even move, Present Mike announced. Midoriya just stood there and won. The second semifinal was more dramatic. Todoroki versus Bakugo was a clash of pride and power. Bakugo attacked with everything he had, explosions filling the arena. Todoroki responded with massive ice constructs, finally using his fire side as well. The battle was fierce, destructive, and showcased both students' incredible potential. But Todoroki's combination of ice and fire gave him the edge. He froze Bakugo's sweat, preventing explosions, then overwhelmed him with a combination attack that sent the explosive student unconscious into the wall. Winner, Todoroki. The crowd went wild. Finally, a match that wasn't a one-sided domination. Now came the finals. Midoriya versus Todoroki, brother versus brother, fire versus fire and ice, the two strongest students of Class 1A. The stadium fell silent as Izuku and Todoroki took their positions. In the stands, Endeavor leaned forward, interested. This Midoriya student had shown incredible power. Watching him fight Shoto would be educational. On the field, the brothers faced each other. Midoriya, Todoroki said, I'm not holding back. Good, neither am I. I'm going to prove I can surpass you without his legacy. You're going to fail, because you're still thinking about him. I stopped caring about Endeavor years ago. That's why I'm stronger. Midnight raised her hand. Final match, Midoriya versus Todoroki. Begin. Todoroki immediately created a massive ice wall, trying to overwhelm Izuku with his opening move. Izuku's body temperature spiked, melting the ice before it could reach him. Ice won't work. You should know that. Todoroki switched tactics, using his fire side to launch flame attacks. But flames against magma was like fighting fire with nuclear fusion. Izuku walked through the flames untouched, his magma form glowing white-hot. Fire won't work either. You're using his techniques, his training. That's why you can't beat me. Todoroki combined both sides, creating steam and temperature differentials, trying to destabilize Izuku's footing. It was creative. Impressive even. It wasn't enough. Izuku raised both hands. Daifunka. Massive magma fists erupted from his arms, not aimed at Todoroki directly, but at the ground around him. The arena floor melted, creating a moat of lava that trapped Todoroki in a shrinking circle. You're strong, Todoroki. You have potential, but you're still fighting his shadow instead of building your own legend. Todoroki tried to create ice bridges, but they melted instantly. His fire couldn't match Izuku's heat. He was trapped. Yield, Izuku said, or I'll end this. Todoroki's pride warred with logic. He looked at his brother, half-brother, standing in the center of a volcanic arena, completely in control, utterly dominant. He'd lost. I yield. The crowd was silent for 3 seconds, then erupted in applause. Winner, Izuku Midoriya! Izuku's temperature returned to normal. The magma cooled, solidifying into harmless rock. He walked to Todoroki and offered a hand. You fought well, but stop thinking about Endeavor. Build your own path. Todoroki took the hand, pulling himself up. How do you do it? How do you not care about him? Because caring gives him power over you. He's nothing to me. Not worth my anger, not worth my hatred, not even worth my acknowledgement. The only thing I'll give him is the knowledge that he was wrong about me. In the stands, Endeavor watched the exchange with growing curiosity. There was something familiar about Midoriya. The way he moved, the fire in his quirk, the cold determination in his eyes, like looking in a mirror from 20 years ago. But that was impossible. The memory surfaced. A woman with green hair, a pregnant plea he'd dismissed. Get rid of it. Endeavor's eyes widened. No, it couldn't be. On the field, Izuku accepted his gold medal from All Might, standing on the first-place platform with no smile, no celebration, just cold satisfaction. He dominated the sports festival, proven his strength to the entire nation, sent a message to every villain watching, and somewhere in the stands, his father was beginning to understand what he'd thrown away. The future of heroism had arrived, and it burned with the heat of absolute justice. The media storm hit like a tsunami. Within hours of the sports festival's conclusion, Izuku Midoriya's name dominated every news channel, social media platform, and hero discussion forum in Japan. The footage played on endless loops, the casual destruction of the obstacle course, the 15 million point cavalry battle domination, the volcanic arena created in the finals. But it wasn't just his power that sparked controversy, it was the bodies. The entrance exam footage had been partially suppressed by UA, but the sports festival was broadcast live to the entire nation. Everyone had watched Izuku melt obstacles, create lava moats, and demonstrate the kind of destructive capability that belonged to top 10 pro heroes, not first-year students. And everyone remembered the USJ incident 3 weeks prior. Over 50 villains dead. The Nomu, a creature designed to fight All Might, reduced to molten slag. Public opinion fractured into 3 camps. The first camp saw Izuku as the future of heroism. Crime rates had plummeted in areas where he'd been active. Villains surrendered rather than face him. He protected civilians with ruthless efficiency. His methods were brutal, yes, but they worked. In a world where villain attacks killed thousands annually, Perhaps excessive force was exactly what hero society needed. The second camp viewed him as dangerous, unstable, barely distinguishable from the villains he killed. They demanded restrictions on his quirk usage, mandatory psychological evaluation, and removal from the hero program. A student who killed without hesitation, who showed no remorse, who treated human lives, even villain lives, as obstacles to be removed, that wasn't heroic. That was monstrous. The third camp didn't care about morality. They were terrified. Izuku sat in his apartment, ignoring the television where analysts debated his psychological profile and concerning lack of empathy. His mother placed tea beside him, her small hand squeezing his shoulder. "How do you feel about all this?" Inko asked softly. "Indifferent. They can debate all they want. It changes nothing. Some of them are calling you a monster. Let them. Monsters are what villains fear most." Inko studied her son's profile, the sharp green eyes, the set jaw, the absolute certainty in every word he spoke. He'd grown so strong, so capable, so far beyond what she'd ever imagined possible. But sometimes, late at night, she worried about the cost of that strength. "Izuku, I need to ask you something important." He turned to face her, giving her his full attention. She was the only person who received that courtesy. "Do you still feel things? Empathy, compassion, guilt? Or has all this power changed something inside you?" Izuku considered the question seriously. His mother deserved honest answers. "I feel things for you. Care, protectiveness, love. You're my anchor, the reason I maintain control, the proof that I'm not what they claim I am. And for others, selective compassion. I feel protective towards civilians who need defending. I feel contempt for villains who threaten them. But guilt? Remorse for killing those who would hurt innocents?" He shook his head. "No. Justice doesn't apologize for removing evil from the world." Inko's eyes glistened, but she nodded. "As long as you still feel something, Izuku. As long as you haven't become completely cold." "I haven't, Mom. I promise." She kissed his forehead, and for these few minutes, Izuku allowed himself to be a son instead of a weapon. The Hero Public Safety Commission summoned him 2 days later. Izuku walked through their headquarters, ignoring the staff who whispered and stared as he passed. He was escorted to a conference room where 3 officials waited, their expressions carefully neutral. Midoriya, Izuku. "Sit." "Sit." He remained standing. "I'll stand. This won't take long." The lead official, a woman named Madam President, though Izuku suspected that wasn't her real title, folded her hands on the table. "You've caused quite a disruption, young man. The sports festival was meant to showcase UA's students, not spark a national debate about lethal force and hero ethics. I demonstrated my capabilities. That's what the festival exists for. Your capabilities include killing dozens of people, dozens of villains. There's a difference. Not to the public, not to the families of those you've killed. Villain families can grieve for their criminal relatives. Civilian families don't have to grieve at all. Me will, because I removed the threats permanently. Which loss matters more?" Madam President's neutral expression cracked slightly. "You're 16 years old and you speak like a veteran soldier discussing acceptable casualties." "I speak like someone who understands that evil doesn't negotiate, doesn't reform, doesn't deserve second chances. I speak like someone who prioritizes the innocent over the guilty." One of the other officials leaned forward. "The Hero Commission exists to regulate hero activities and maintain public order. Your methods threaten that order. My methods eliminate the threats to that order. You should be thanking me. We're considering placing restrictions on your hero license application. Mandatory supervision, limited engagement protocols, psychological evaluation." Izuku's eyes flashed with cold anger. "You have no authority to restrict me. I've broken no laws. Self-defense statutes cover every villain I've killed. You're not here to regulate me. You're here to control me, because I'm more effective than your carefully managed heroes." The temperature in the room began to rise. Not threatening, just noticeable, a reminder of what Izuku could do if he chose. Madam President raised a hand to calm her colleagues. "We're not trying to control you, Midoriya. We're trying to integrate you into the existing hero system. A system that works." Does it? Villain recidivism is 43%. Villain-related deaths are increasing annually. Major villain organizations operate openly. Your system doesn't work. It maintains a comfortable equilibrium that keeps heroes employed and villains alive to fight another day. That's a cynical view. It's an accurate view. You don't want to eliminate villains. You want to manage them. I'm offering a different solution: eradication. Which brings us to our actual proposal. Madam President pulled out a file. The Commission would like to offer you a unique position. You'd work directly under our supervision, deployed specifically against high-level threats that standard heroes struggle with: increased authority, access to classified intelligence, protection from legal prosecution. In exchange for becoming your attack dog, pointed at whatever threats you deem appropriate, leashed when I become inconvenient. In exchange for proper integration into hero society. Izuku studied the three officials, seeing their calculation clearly. They wanted his power under their control. They wanted to use him to eliminate problems while maintaining plausible deniability. They wanted a weapon they could wield without taking responsibility for its use. I refuse. You haven't even looked at the terms. I don't need to. I won't be controlled by bureaucrats who've never faced a real villain in their lives. I'll complete my education at UA, obtain my hero license through standard channels, and operate according to my own judgment. If that's unacceptable to you, try to stop me. The room's temperature spiked sharply. Smoke began to rise from Izuku's shoulders. The officials backed away from the table. Is that a threat? One of them stammered. It's a statement of fact. You have no means to restrict me. No authority I'm obligated to recognize. No power to enforce your will. I suggest you accept that and move on. Madam President's face had gone pale, but she maintained her composure. You're making a mistake, Midoriya. The Commission has ways of making uncooperative heroes' lives very difficult. Then you'll discover what happens when you threaten someone who doesn't fear consequences. Izuku turned toward the door. This meeting is over. He left without waiting for dismissal, magma dripping from his fingertips and scorching the carpet with each step. Behind him, the three officials exchanged worried glances. He's too dangerous to leave unchecked, one said. He's too powerful to check, Madam President replied. All we can do is monitor him and hope UA can temper his methods before he becomes a real problem. And if they can't? Silence answered that question. Internship offers flooded in after the sports festival. Most came from mid-tier heroes looking for publicity. Having the Magma student in their office would generate media attention and boost their profiles. Izuku rejected these immediately. He wasn't interested in being anyone's publicity stunt. Some came from top 10 heroes intrigued by his power. Best Genist offered to teach him refinement and public image management. Gang Orca promised combat training against experienced opponents. Ryukyu suggested her agency could help him develop non-lethal combat applications. Izuku rejected all of them. They wanted to change him, mold him into a more palatable version of himself. That wasn't education. It was domestication. One offer stood out. It came from a hero Izuku had never heard of. Yoroi Musha, the equipped hero. Ranked number 9 before his retirement, now operating a small agency on the outskirts of Kyoto. The offer was blunt. I don't care about your methods. I don't care about public opinion. I fought in the early days of hero society when villains were more numerous and heroes less regulated. We did what was necessary. If you want to learn practical combat, efficient villain elimination, and tactical hero work without the bureaucratic nonsense, come to Kyoto. I'll teach you how to be effective, not popular. Izuku accepted immediately. His classmates' internships varied. Bakugo went to Best Genist, seeking refinement he'd never accept. Todoroki chose his father's agency, a decision that surprised everyone, including Shoto himself. Uraraka joined Gunhead for combat training. Ida selected a hero near Hosu City for reasons he kept private. Are you sure about this? Aizawa asked before students departed for their week-long internships. Yoroi Musha is competent, but he's old school. His methods are closer to yours than most modern heroes would approve. That's exactly why I chose him. You're not going to learn restraint from someone who practiced the same brutal efficiency you do. I don't need to learn restraint. I need to learn refinement. There's a difference. Aizawa sighed, but he didn't push further. Izuku was legally allowed to choose his internship, and the Commission's attempt to restrict him had failed. All UA could do was hope his first real experience in professional hero work wouldn't result in too many bodies. Kyoto's outskirts were quiet residential, far from the city's bustling center. Yoroi Musha's agency occupied a traditional building that looked more like a dojo than a hero office. The man himself was tall, elderly, with gray hair and armor-themed hero costume that looked decades old. His eyes held the sharp awareness of someone who'd survived countless battles. Midoriya Izuku, the boy who turned the sports festival into a funeral for anyone stupid enough to challenge him. Sir. Don't call me sir. Call me Musha. Come inside. The agency's interior was Spartan, training mats, weapon racks, tactical maps, nothing wasted on comfort or appearance. You want to learn practical hero work, Musha said, gesturing for Izuku to sit. That means understanding that hero work is warfare against an enemy that doesn't follow rules. The modern hero system pretends otherwise. It treats villain encounters like sporting events. Capture, arrest, process through legal system, repeat when they escape or get released. You've already figured out that system is broken. Yes. Good. Then we can skip the philosophical debate. This week, I'm teaching you 3 things: tactical analysis, efficient elimination, and surgical precision. You have overwhelming power. That's your strength. But overwhelming power used thoughtlessly is just destruction. I'm going to teach you how to apply that power with perfect efficiency. Musha pulled up a holographic display showing Kyoto's city map with marked locations. This city has a villain problem. Not the flashy televised kind, the persistent corrosive kind. Drug trafficking, human trafficking, organized crime rings that have operated for decades. Because heroes keep arresting the foot soldiers while the leaders remain untouched. You're going to change that. You want me to eliminate the leadership. I want you to eliminate the entire organization, leaders, enforcers, operations, total eradication, but efficiently. Minimal collateral damage, maximum villain removal, surgical application of overwhelming force. Izuku leaned forward, interested. This was exactly the education he needed. Show me the targets. Musha's expression might have been a smile. I knew I'd like you. The first operation began that night. The target, a human trafficking ring operating from a warehouse complex in Kyoto's industrial district. Intelligence indicated 43 villains on site, 17 with combat-oriented quirks, and approximately 30 civilians held captive. Standard hero operation would be call for backup, surround the complex, negotiate, or breach, Musha explained as they observed from a nearby rooftop. Takes hours, gives villains time to kill hostages or escape, results in lengthy combat that risks civilian casualties. What's your method? Identify highest value target, eliminate them instantly, then systematic eradication of remaining villains before they can react. Entire operation in under 3 minutes. Hostages never at risk because villains die before they can threaten them. That requires perfect intelligence and overwhelming speed, which is why we spent all day gathering intelligence and why I chose you. Your magma can eliminate multiple targets simultaneously at range. Ready? Izuku's body temperature began to rise. Which building is the leadership in? Southwest corner, second floor, 3 targets. And the hostages? Northeast corner, ground floor, behind reinforced door the villains use as a vault. Izuku calculated angles, distances, timing. He'd need to eliminate the leaders first, then prevent any villain from reaching the hostages during the chaos. 3 minutes was generous. He could do it in 90 seconds. I'm ready. Then show me what absolute justice looks like, kid. Izuku transformed. His entire upper body became magma, glowing white-hot in the darkness. He raised both arms toward the warehouse complex. Inugami Guren. 5 magma hounds erupted from his body, each one targeting a different building in the complex. They moved with predatory speed, silent and lethal, crashing through windows and walls simultaneously. The southwest corner building erupted in screams lasting exactly 2 seconds before silence. Leadership eliminated. Ryusei Kazan. Magma fists launched into the air, dozens of them, each one targeting specific locations Musha had marked on his tactical display. They rained down with perfect accuracy, smashing through roofs and walls, finding villains in hiding spots throughout the complex. Villains with combat quirks tried to retaliate, but magma at 3,000 degrees didn't care about elemental resistance or physical enhancement. Metal melters melted. Strength enhancers burned. Speed types died before they could run. The northeast building remained untouched. Hostages safe behind that reinforced door, unaware of the inferno consuming their captors 30 meters away. Mago. Izuku's magma fist extended, massive and precise, smashing through the final building where the remaining villains had retreated. He shaped the attack carefully, crushing the villains against the walls while leaving the building's support structure intact. No collapse? No innocent casualties, just efficient elimination. 90 seconds, 43 villains dead, 30 hostages unharmed. Izuku's temperature returned to normal as sirens approached in the distance. 68 seconds, Musha said, checking his stopwatch. Efficient, but you melted through a water main in the second building. Flooding will complicate rescue operations. I'll adjust for infrastructure in future operations. See that you do. Power without precision is just expensive destruction. Let's extract before the authorities arrive. You're not registered to operate in this jurisdiction, and I'd rather not deal with the paperwork. They vanished into the night, leaving behind a warehouse complex that looked like a volcanic eruption had been contained within its walls. The pattern repeated for 7 days. Each night, Musha identified a target. Each night, Izuku eliminated them with increasing precision and efficiency. Drug operations, trafficking rings, villain safe houses, organized crime networks, all of them experienced the same fate: total eradication. By the end of the week, Kyoto's underworld was in chaos. 17 separate criminal organizations had been completely destroyed. Over 200 villains were dead. Not arrested, not captured, not processed through the legal system, simply removed from existence. Crime rates plummeted. Civilians felt safer. Hero response times decreased because there were fewer incidents to respond to. And Izuku learned what he needed to learn. Tactical efficiency isn't about using less power, Musha explained during their final session. It's about applying the right amount of power to the right location at the right time. You have the capability to level city blocks. The question is whether you can eliminate a single target in a crowd without harming bystanders. Show me how. Musha set up a training scenario, mannequins representing villains interspersed with mannequins representing civilians, all clustered together in realistic street layout. 3 villain targets among 17 civilians. Hit the villains, don't touch the civilians. You have 5 seconds. Izuku studied the layout, calculating heat dispersion, targeting angles, magma projectile trajectories. Inugami Gurin. 3 smaller magma hounds, shaped with precise temperature control, weaved through the crowd of mannequins. They struck their targets with surgical accuracy, melting the villain dummies while passing within centimeters of civilian dummies without scorching them. Musha nodded approvingly. Better. You're learning to modulate output based on tactical requirements rather than just overwhelming every threat with maximum force. Maximum force is still appropriate in most scenarios. Agreed. But now you have options. That's what separates a weapon from a warrior, the ability to choose precision when overwhelming force would cause unacceptable collateral damage. The week concluded with Musha's assessment. You came here as a student with overwhelming power and brutal efficiency. You're leaving as a hero who can apply that power with tactical precision. You're still going to kill villains. That's who you are, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But now you'll do it without accidentally melting the civilians you're trying to protect. Thank you for the training, Musha. Don't thank me. Just remember what I taught you when the Commission tries to rein you in, when public opinion turns against you, when other heroes call your methods excessive. You're effective because you don't compromise. Maintain that conviction, but balance it with precision. That's how you become legendary instead of just powerful. Izuku returned to UA with new understanding. Power was his foundation. Precision was his refinement. Together, they would make him unstoppable. The rest of Class 1A returned from their internships with varied experiences. Bakugo came back surprisingly subdued, best genus lessons in refinement having made some minimal impact. Todoroki seemed conflicted about his time with Endeavor, though he didn't discuss it. Uraraka showed improved combat skills. Ida returned with a quiet intensity that suggested something significant had happened. They shared stories during lunch, training exercises, patrol experiences, minor villain encounters. Then someone asked Izuku about his week. I eliminated 17 criminal organizations and over 200 villains. Kyoto's crime rate dropped 47% in 7 days. Silence descended over the lunch table. You killed 200 people in 1 week? Kaminari whispered. 200 villains, and I didn't kill them all personally. Some died in secondary fires or structural collapses after I removed their leadership. Kirishima struggled for words. That's not manly, dude. That's just mass murder. It's mass eradication of criminal elements. Kyoto's civilians are safer now than they've been in decades. That's what heroism should accomplish. Uraraka's cheerful demeanor had evaporated. But killing that many people, doesn't it bother you? No. Should it? The question hung in the air, unanswered, until students began quietly returning to their own conversations, pointedly excluding Izuku. Only Todoroki remained. They fear you now, more than before. Good. Fear keeps people cautious. Caution prevents them from getting hurt. Is that why you do it? To protect people through intimidation? I do it because it's effective. The intimidation is a useful side effect. Izuku studied his half-brother. Your internship with Endeavor. How was it? Todoroki's expression darkened. Complicated. He's trying to be different. Better. It's strange. He's trying to prove he can be a decent father after abandoning that responsibility for 16 years. Let me know if he succeeds. I'm curious whether people can actually change or if they just pretend until it's convenient to revert. You really don't believe in redemption? I believe in consequences. Endeavor is experiencing the consequences of his choices. Whether he genuinely changes or just performs change to ease his guilt is irrelevant to me. He's nothing. But Todoroki noticed the slight tension in Izuku's jaw when he spoke about their father. Not quite the complete indifference Izuku claimed. The League of Villains had noticed Izuku too. Shigaraki Tomura sat in the League's new hideout, scratching at his neck while watching footage of the sports festival for the 100th time. He's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Kurogiri materialized beside him. The Midoriya boy, he's powerful, certainly, but he considers himself a hero. Heroes don't kill 50 people at USJ. Heroes don't eliminate 200 villains in a week. Heroes don't speak about justice like it's a weapon to be wielded. Shigaraki's scratching intensified. He's everything I wanted to be. Someone who breaks the fake hero society by showing them what real power looks like. He uses that power to protect civilians. For now. But what happens when civilians become obstacles? What happens when hero society rejects him for being too brutal, too efficient, too willing to do what's necessary? He'll realize the truth, that he's not a hero. He's just someone pretending to be one, while the real heroes smile and shake hands and accomplish nothing. Kurogiri remained silent. His master, All for One, had been watching Izuku Midoriya with great interest. A boy with that much power, that little hesitation, and that cold conviction could become either a devastating enemy or a valuable asset. We need to test him, Shigaraki decided. See if he's really committed to the hero side or if he's just one bad day away from joining us. And if he's truly committed to heroism, then we kill him before he becomes strong enough to threaten Sensei's plans. The test came in Hosu City. Izuku wasn't supposed to be there. His internship was over, he was back at UA, and Hosu was 3 hours away by train. But he'd received an anonymous message. Hero killer staying active in Hosu tonight. Multiple targets identified. Come if you want to stop him. The message was obviously a trap, probably from the League of Villains, possibly from Stain himself. Izuku went anyway. Not because he walked into traps blindly, but because ignoring the message meant Stain would kill more heroes, and Izuku was curious what the infamous hero killer might offer in terms of combat experience. He arrived in Hosu just as chaos erupted. Nomus, multiple versions of the creature he'd killed at USJ, appeared throughout the city, attacking civilians and heroes with coordinated brutality. 3 of them. Smaller than the original, but still formidable, still dangerous, still designed to kill. And somewhere in the chaos, the hero killer was hunting. Izuku's decision was instantaneous. The Nomus were the primary threat, engineered weapons designed for mass casualties. Stain could wait. He moved toward the closest Nomu, transforming mid-leap. His magma body glowed against the night sky, drawing attention from heroes and villains alike. The Nomu turned toward him, multiple quirks activating, enhanced strength, regeneration, some kind of electric discharge. Daifunka. Izuku's magma fist expanded to building size, crashed into the Nomu with devastating force, and sent it flying through 3 buildings before it stopped. He followed immediately, not giving it time to regenerate. Inugami Guren. Magma hounds swarmed the creature, attacking from multiple angles, burning through its regeneration faster than it could heal. The Nomu tried to fight back, electric discharges scorching the air, but magma didn't conduct electricity the way flesh did. Izuku's hand closed around the Nomu's brain case. The creature's eyes widened in what might have been fear. Mego. His magma fist compressed, crushing and melting simultaneously. The Nomu's regeneration tried desperately to keep up, but 5,000-degree heat boiled its brain faster than quirks could repair. The creature died screaming. 1 down. 2 remaining. Izuku leaped to the next location, where a Nomu was battling 3 pro heroes unsuccessfully. They were fast, strong, experienced, and they were losing. "Move," Izuku shouted. The heroes looked up, saw him descending like a meteor, and scattered. Ryusei Kazan! Magma fists rained from above, dozens of them, pounding the Nomu into the concrete. Each impact drove it deeper into the ground. Each explosion of heat made its regeneration work harder. Izuku landed beside the crater he'd created. The Nomu was still alive, still trying to regenerate, but its exposed brain was damaged, its body failing. Your creatures are failures. Tell whoever sent you that engineered weapons can't match natural evolution. The Nomu opened its mouth. Izuku's magma hand crushed its skull. 2 down, 1 remaining. He sensed the third Nomu before he saw it, felt the tremor of its footsteps as it rampaged through downtown Hosu. Civilians were fleeing, heroes were engaging, and the creature was winning through sheer overwhelming force. Izuku approached the battle scene just as the Nomu grabbed a hero, someone with a water quirk, utterly ineffective against the creature's strength. Let go of him. The Nomu turned toward Izuku's voice. Its eyes held more intelligence than the others, suggesting this was the leader, the primary threat. You're the one who killed the Nomu at USJ. Its voice was distorted but comprehensible. Master wants to see if you're worthy of his attention. I'm not interested in your master. Put the hero down or I'll tear you apart. The Nomu laughed, a horrible sound. Tear me apart? I was designed specifically to counter magma types, heat absorption, fire resistance, molten form. I can handle anything, you. Ryugun. Izuku's arm transformed into a massive magma construct shaped like a dog's jaw. It extended with blinding speed, clamped around the Nomu's torso, and bit through enhanced durability, fire resistance, and regeneration simultaneously. The creature's top half separated from its bottom half. Both halves fell to the ground, twitching, regeneration trying desperately to reconnect them. Izuku walked forward, his body fully transformed into magma, temperature rising beyond what the Nomu's heat absorption could handle. The air around him shimmered, concrete melted beneath his feet, and the Nomu's regeneration began to fail as its biological systems overheated. Tell your master this when you see him in whatever hell receives failures. I'm not someone to be tested. I'm someone to be avoided. Kane Homura. A wall of magma erupted around the Nomu's separated halves, cutting them off from oxygen, from cooling air, from anything that might allow regeneration to continue. The flames burned white hot, sustained by Izuku's will, consuming the creature completely. When the flames dispersed, nothing remained except melted concrete and ash. 3 Nomus, all dead. Total elapsed time, 11 minutes. Izuku's temperature returned to normal as he surveyed the damaged city. Heroes were regrouping, civilians were being evacuated, and emergency services were responding to dozens of injuries. But casualties were minimal. The Nomus had been eliminated before they could cause real damage. Impressive. The voice came from an alley. Izuku turned to see a man in tactical gear, face wrapped in bandages, multiple blades strapped to his body. The hero killer, Stain. You eliminated 3 Nomus designed to counter hero tactics. You saved dozens of lives. You demonstrated overwhelming power and tactical efficiency. Stain stepped into the light, his expression unreadable behind the bandages. And yet you're not a real hero. I'm not interested in your philosophy. You should be, because we're the same, you and I. We both see hero society's corruption. We both know that most heroes are frauds playing dress-up for fame and money. We both eliminate threats without hesitation. We're nothing alike. You kill heroes who you've decided aren't worthy. I kill villains who threaten innocent people. There's a fundamental difference. Stain's eyes narrowed. Is there? You kill without trial, without due process, without mercy. You've decided you have the right to determine who lives and dies. How is that different from my mission? Because my targets are objectively evil. Villains attack innocent people. Killing them protects civilians. Your targets are heroes, flawed perhaps, but still working to protect people. Killing them removes protection from the innocent. Your mission is self-righteous murder. Mine is justified defense. Justified? Stain laughed bitterly. You think society will accept that justification? You think the Hero Commission will allow you to keep killing? You're naive, Midoriya. They'll turn on you the moment your body count becomes politically inconvenient. They'll arrest you, restrict you, or eliminate you. And when that day comes, you'll realize we were fighting the same battle all along. Izuku's hands began to smoke. You're wrong, and if you continue killing heroes, I'll be the one who stops you. Then you'd have to kill me, which would prove my point, that you're no different from me. I'd kill you because you're a murderer who targets heroes. The justification is clear. The morality is simple. You're a villain, and villains die. Stain's posture shifted into combat stance. Prove it. Show me whether your absolute justice applies to someone who sees the same corruption you do. Izuku transformed, his body becoming magma. You really want to fight me? I want to see if you're truly committed to your path or if you're just another fraud pretending to be something you're not. They stared at each other across the alley, two ideologues with fundamentally opposed worldviews, both convinced of their own righteousness, both willing to kill to prove their point. Then Izuku spoke with Akainu's cold authority. You want conviction? I'll show you conviction that will burn away your delusions like paper in a volcano. Stain charged. His quirk, Blood Curdle, required ingesting his opponent's blood to paralyze them. A dangerous ability against most heroes, useless against someone whose body was literally molten rock. Izuku didn't dodge. He let Stain close the distance, let him swing his blade, let the weapon pass through his magma body without connecting with anything solid. Logia intangibility. The ability that made him untouchable. Stain's eyes widened in understanding too late. Mago. Izuku's magma fist materialized solidly around Stain's torso, lifting him off the ground. The heat wasn't lethal, not yet, but it was excruciating. Stain's tactical gear began to smoke and melt. Your quirk requires touching me. My quirk prevents you from touching me. This fight was over before it started. Stain struggled, trying to break free, but magma couldn't be grappled or leveraged. Kill me then. Prove you're just another executioner. I'm not here to prove anything to you. I'm here to remove a threat. Izuku increased the temperature. Stain screamed. You kill heroes because you've decided they're unworthy. That's not justice. That's arrogance. You've appointed yourself judge, jury, and executioner based on your personal standards of worthiness. That's villainy wrapped in self-righteous philosophy. The temperature increased again. Stain's screams became hoarse gasps. I kill villains because they objectively threaten innocent people. There's no moral ambiguity there, no philosophical debate. Villains hurt civilians, I remove villains, civilians stay safe. Simple, effective, justified. We're the same, Stain gasped. No, we're not. And I'm going to prove it by doing something you never could, showing mercy to someone who doesn't deserve it. Izuku dropped Stain to the ground. The hero killer collapsed, his body covered in burns but alive, conscious. Why? Stain wheezed. Because killing you would be convenient, but it wouldn't prove anything except that I can kill. Letting you live, letting you face justice through the legal system, letting you see that your philosophy fails when confronted with actual absolute conviction. That proves I'm different from you. Izuku turned away as sirens approached. You'll be arrested, you'll be imprisoned, and every day you spend in that cell, you'll remember that I could have killed you but chose not to. Not because you deserved mercy, but because you weren't worth violating my principles. He left Stain lying in the alley, burned and broken, but alive. Professional heroes arrived minutes later, found the legendary hero killer unconscious and defeated, and tried to piece together what happened. Izuku was already gone, vanished into Hosu's chaos, leaving behind 3 dead Nomus and 1 living example of what happened when ideology confronted reality. The Hosu incident generated even more controversy. Izuku had saved countless lives by eliminating the Nomus. That was undeniable, documented, celebrated by the civilians whose lives he'd protected. But he'd also defeated the hero killer, one of the most dangerous villains in recent history, and let him live. That decision confused everyone who'd been calling Izuku a heartless executioner. Why didn't he kill Stain? Analysts debated on television. He kills regular villains without hesitation, but he spared someone who's murdered 17 heroes? Maybe he has standards we don't understand. Or maybe he's more complex than the emotionless killer narrative suggests. Izuku ignored the speculation. His reasoning was clear to him, and others' understanding was irrelevant. Stain wasn't worth killing because Stain's philosophy was already dead. The man believed hero society would collapse from corruption. Izuku was proving that hero society could be reformed through overwhelming force applied to genuine threats. Killing Stain would have validated his worldview. Defeating and sparing him demonstrated the superiority of Izuku's approach. Besides, Stain would spend life in prison thinking about how absolute justice had shown him mercy he didn't deserve. That was punishment enough. Yue called him in for a meeting the day after Hosu. Principal Nezu sat behind his desk, sipping tea, his expression unreadable. Aizawa stood nearby, arms crossed, looking even more tired than usual. Midoriya, you went to Hosu without authorization, engaged multiple high-level threats, eliminated 3 Nomus, and defeated the hero killer, all while technically operating as an unlicensed hero student outside your designated jurisdiction. Yes, that's remarkably illegal, Nezu continued cheerfully. Several laws were broken. Unauthorized hero work, vigilantism, technically crossing prefectural boundaries without proper clearance. The Hero Commission is quite upset. Let them be upset. I responded to a credible threat and saved lives. Their bureaucratic regulations don't supersede moral obligation. Aizawa spoke up. You could have called actual heroes, waited for proper authorization, operated within the system. And while I waited for authorization, how many people would have died? The system is slow. Villains aren't. I prioritized lives over procedure. Nezu nodded slowly, which brings us to an interesting dilemma. You violated multiple regulations, but you also saved hundreds of lives and captured one of Japan's most dangerous villains. How do we punish heroism that breaks rules while achieving its fundamental purpose? You don't. You acknowledge that sometimes rules are obstacles to justice and adjust accordingly. Spoken like someone who will give us continuous headaches once you're a professional hero, Aizawa muttered. We're not going to punish you, Nezu said, but we are going to make something very clear. UA is shielding you from significant legal consequences. The commission wants you arrested for unauthorized hero work. We've convinced them that would be politically catastrophic given your obvious effectiveness and public support, but our ability to shield you has limits. I understand. Do you? Because the next time you decide to operate outside authorized parameters, we might not be able to protect you from the consequences. And consequences for someone as powerful as you would be severe. Izuku met Nezu's eyes calmly. I appreciate UA's support, but I won't apologize for prioritizing civilian lives over regulations. If that eventually results in consequences I have to face, so be it. I'll accept punishment for doing the right thing. Nezu sipped his tea. You really are going to reshape hero society, aren't you? Either by proving your methods superior or by forcing the system to adapt to accommodate you. Ideally both. Dismissed, Midoriya, and please try not to single-handedly prevent any more national-level incidents without authorization. It makes the paperwork exhausting. Izuku left the office, aware that he'd been given a warning disguised as understanding. The League of Villains had been watching Hosu too. Shigaraki scratched furiously at his neck, watching footage of Izuku annihilating the Nomus with contemptuous ease. He destroyed 3 of them. 3 Nomus specifically designed to counter powerful quirks, and he eliminated them like they were training dummies. He's more powerful than we calculated, Kurogiri observed. No, he's exactly as powerful as we calculated. We just underestimated how efficiently he applies that power. Shigaraki's scratching drew blood. Sensei's going to be interested in this. Very interested. In his secret chamber, All for One watched the same footage with calculating eyes. Midoriya Izuku, the boy who'd killed over 300 villains in 6 months, who demonstrated power rivaling pro-heroes while still technically a student, who showed no hesitation, no doubt, no weakness that could be exploited. Remarkable, All for One mused. He has the power of a top hero and the conviction of a fanatic. He could become either my greatest enemy or my most valuable asset. How do we determine which? Dr. Garaki asked. We test him. Not with brute force. We've seen how that ends. With philosophy, with offers, with demonstrations of what he could accomplish if he wasn't shackled by hero society's hypocrisy. And if he refuses, then we eliminate him before he becomes strong enough to threaten my plans. But I suspect young Midoriya might be more flexible than his current heroic pose suggests. After all, someone who kills without remorse is already halfway to villainy. He just needs the right motivation to take the final step. The rest of the school year passed in relative calm. Izuku continued training, continued growing stronger, continued developing his magma abilities in new directions. He learned to create constructs that lasted longer, to control temperature with surgical precision, to apply overwhelming force without unnecessary collateral damage. His classmates gave him space, not quite ostracism, but cautious distance. They respected his strength, feared his methods, and couldn't quite reconcile the cold efficiency he demonstrated in combat with the quiet student who sat alone at lunch. Todoroki remained the closest thing he had to a friend, though their relationship was more mutual understanding than actual friendship. They were both children of Endeavor's ambition, both wielding fire without seeking their father's approval, both walking paths that isolated them from their peers. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" Todoroki asked during one training session. "No. Doubt is a luxury we can't afford. Villains don't doubt themselves. If we hesitate, people die. But what if we're becoming the very thing we're fighting against? What if this path turns us into something worse than the villains we eliminate?" Izuku paused his training, considering the question seriously. The difference between us and villains isn't methods, it's purpose. Villains hurt innocent people to achieve selfish goals. We hurt villains to protect innocent people. As long as that distinction remains clear, we're not becoming villains. We're becoming the absolute justice that hero society needs. Absolute justice, Todoroki repeated. That's what Endeavor claimed to represent. Look where his absolute conviction led him. Endeavor's conviction was about personal glory and surpassing all might. Mine is about protecting civilians from threats. There's a difference. Is there? Or are we just better at justifying our actions than he was? The question lingered between them, unanswered, because neither of them had a satisfactory response. The year concluded with final exams, practical and written tests designed to assess students' readiness for advanced hero training. The practical exam pitted students against teachers in combat scenarios. Most students struggled, their quirks and skills insufficient against experienced pro-heroes. Izuku faced Aizawa and 13 simultaneously. The test lasted 47 seconds. Aizawa activated Erasure, nullifying Izuku's quirk. 13 attempted to use Black Hole to trap him. Izuku responded by demonstrating something he'd been developing privately, his physical combat skills. Even without his quirk, he'd trained his body to be weapon grade, honed through countless hours of practice in the gym and with Yoroimusha's guidance. He closed the distance to Aizawa faster than Erasure could be maintained continuously, struck with precision that forced the teacher to blink, then transformed the instant his quirk returned. Inugami Guren. A magma hound grabbed 13's helmet and melted it partially, forcing the hero to deactivate Black Hole or risk losing their head. Both teachers yielded. "You've been training hand-to-hand combat," Aizawa observed, "specifically to counter Erasure-type quirks. I trained to counter every possible threat. Quirk nullification is just one category. Most students rely entirely on their quirks. Most students are complacent. I'm not." Aizawa almost smiled. "You're going to be a problem for villains, Midoriya. A massive, overwhelming, volcanic problem. That's the intention." First year concluded. Summer break began, and Izuku prepared for the training camp that would mark the next phase of his journey toward absolute justice. The summer training camp was held in a remote mountain facility designed for intensive quirk development. Class 1A arrived with excitement and trepidation. This was where they'd push their abilities to new limits under the wild pussycat's supervision. Izuku stood apart from his classmates, observing the forest terrain with tactical assessment. Good defensible positions, limited escape routes, isolated from civilian populations. Perfect location for intensive training without collateral damage concerns. "Listen up, kittens," Pixie Bob announced cheerfully. "You have 3 hours to reach the facility at the base of the mountain. There's just one tiny detail. This entire forest is our private land, filled with earth beasts I'll create to test you. The students barely had time to react before the ground erupted with massive earth constructs shaped like monsters. Most students scattered, forming groups, preparing to fight their way through the forest. Izuku walked forward alone. Ryusei Kazan. The sky darkened with magma projectiles. They rained down across the forest, systematically destroying every earth beast in a quarter-mile radius. Trees caught fire. Ground scorched black. The path ahead cleared completely. Izuku walked through the devastation without hurry, reaching the facility in 43 minutes. The pussycats stared at him in shock. That was supposed to take 3 hours, Mandalay stammered. It would have if I'd fought each beast individually. Overwhelming firepower applied efficiently is faster. You destroyed a significant portion of our training forest. The trees will grow back. Time won't. I'm here for quirk training, not scenic hiking. Pixie Bob looked like she wanted to argue, but Aizawa stepped forward. He's not wrong. The exercise's purpose was reaching the facility. He accomplished that objective optimally. The method is irrelevant. The other students arrived over the next 2 hours, exhausted and scratched, having fought earth beasts through the forest. They emerged to find Izuku sitting calmly, having already eaten, having already rested, having already won. Show off, Bakugo muttered. Efficient. Izuku corrected. There's a difference. The training camp structure was intensive. Morning physical conditioning, afternoon quirk development, evening tactical exercises. The goal was pushing each student past their current limits, forcing their quirks to evolve under extreme stress. For most students, this meant discovering new applications, increasing output, or developing combination techniques. For Izuku, it meant something different. Your quirk is already overwhelming. Aizawa explained during a private session. You can generate enough heat to melt steel, create constructs larger than buildings, and sustain magma form for extended periods. Raw power isn't your limitation. Then what is? Precision under pressure, sustained combat endurance, creative application of your abilities in scenarios where overwhelming force isn't viable. Give me an example. Aizawa gestured to a training zone where Koda, a young boy who lived at the facility, was watching sullenly from a distance. That child hates heroes because his parents died in a villain fight. They were heroes who collateral damage took from him. If you want to be truly effective, you need to demonstrate you can eliminate villains without creating more victims in the process. Izuku followed Aizawa's gaze, studying the boy's bitter expression. Point taken. How do we train for that? By putting you in scenarios where brute force creates unacceptable casualties, where you have to eliminate targets while actively protecting civilians who are mixed in with villains, where your power becomes a liability unless wielded with perfect control. The scenarios Aizawa designed were brutal. Mannequins representing villains placed among mannequins representing civilians. Time limits requiring fast decisions. Penalty systems that failed students who caused civilian casualties even while successfully eliminating villains. Most students struggled with these exercises, their quirks too broad or too powerful to discriminate between targets effectively. Izuku excelled. His magma constructs could be shaped with surgical precision. His heat could be modulated to burn through villain dummies while leaving civilian dummies inches away untouched. His tactical mind calculated angles, trajectories, and heat dispersion with mathematical accuracy. Subject eliminated, 0 civilian casualties. Time 4.3 seconds, Aizawa announced after one exercise. Again, but this time the villains are holding civilian hostages. Acknowledged. The pattern repeated. Each scenario grew more complex, more demanding, more designed to force mistakes from even the most skilled students. Izuku made no mistakes. You've trained for this, Aizawa observed. This isn't your first time running hostage scenarios. Yoremusha taught me tactical efficiency requires accounting for civilians in every engagement. I've been practicing precision targeting since my internship. It shows. You're operating at a level most pro heroes don't reach until years into their careers. Aizawa paused. That's going to make you valuable, and valuable people attract dangerous attention. Let them come. I'll eliminate whatever threats emerge. That's what concerns me. You're confident bordering on arrogant. Confident heroes get sloppy. Sloppy heroes die. Izuku's eyes met Aizawa's with cold certainty. I'm not arrogant. I'm accurate. There's a difference. Before Aizawa could respond, alarms blared across the training facility. All students, return to the main building immediately. This is not a drill. The League of Villains had arrived. They emerged from the forest in force. Dozens of villains, multiple nomis, led by a masked figure who introduced himself as Muscular, and a magician who called herself Magni. UA training camp. Muscular laughed, his muscles bulging grotesquely. We're here for Bakugo, but we'll happily kill anyone who gets in our way. Students scattered, heading for the main building as instructed. Teachers moved to intercept the villains, establishing defensive perimeter. Izuku stood still, assessing the situation with tactical clarity. 23 villains, 3 nomis, 6 heroes, 42 students who needed protection. The math was simple. The villains outnumbered heroes 3-1. Standard engagement would result in prolonged combat, multiple casualties, potential student deaths. Unacceptable. Izuku transformed completely, his entire body becoming magma that glowed white-hot in the twilight. All students, get inside now, Aizawa shouted. Teachers, defensive formation. No. Izuku's voice cut through the chaos with Akainu's absolute authority. Teachers, protect the students. I'll handle the villains. Midoriya, you can't. I can. I will. Get the students to safety. He launched forward before anyone could argue, his magma body moving with impossible speed for something that massive. The first Nomu died in 3 seconds. Izuku's magma fist punched through its reinforced skull, boiling its brain before regeneration could activate. The second Nomu tried to use some kind of ranged electric attack. Izuku created a wall of magma that absorbed the electricity and reflected it back as superheated plasma. The creature's flesh vaporized. The third Nomu was smarter, tried to retreat. Inugami Gurren, 3 magma hounds chased it down, tore it apart, scattered the pieces too far for regeneration to reconnect them. 3 Nomus. Dead. Elapsed time, 11 seconds. The villains stared in shock. That's impossible, someone whispered. Those were nomis, modified to Ryusei Kazan. The sky erupted with magma projectiles. They fell like meteoric rain, each one targeting a specific villain with perfect accuracy. Screams filled the air as League members died where they stood, unable to dodge, unable to defend, unable to comprehend the overwhelming force being directed at them. Muscular charged through the bombardment, his enhanced muscles allowing him to tank hits that would have killed normal humans. Finally, someone worth fighting. He swung at Izuku with devastating force. Izuku caught his fist in one magma hand. Muscular's enhanced muscles began to smoke and burn on contact. You're not worth fighting. You're just worth killing. Mego. Izuku's fist compressed around Muscular's hand, melting through muscle enhancement, through bone, through flesh. The villain screamed as his arm liquefied. A second magma fist struck his chest, creating a hole through his torso that no amount of muscle could compensate for. Muscular collapsed, dead before he hit the ground. Magni tried to use her magnetism quirk to pull Izuku off balance. Magma didn't respond to magnetic fields the way metal did. Ken Homura. A wall of flames surrounded Magni, cutting off escape routes, raising temperature to levels that made breathing impossible. She collapsed from heat exhaustion before the flames even touched her. One by one, methodically, efficiently, brutally, Izuku eliminated every League member who'd attacked the training camp. He gave no warnings, showed no mercy, asked no questions. This was absolute justice in its purest form. Identify threats, eliminate threats, protect innocents. No negotiation, no capture, no second chances. When the smoke cleared, 23 villains lay dead, 3 nomis destroyed, 0 hero casualties, 0 student casualties. Izuku stood in the center of the carnage, his magma form cooling to human appearance, green eyes scanning for additional threats, finding none. Situation neutralized, all targets eliminated. Recommend immediate evac and security perimeter establishment in case of secondary attack. The teachers stared at him, unable to process what had just happened. In under 4 minutes, a single first-year student had annihilated an attack force designed to kidnap a student and cause maximum UA casualties. Midoriya. Aizawa approached cautiously. You just killed 23 people. 23 villains who attacked a school full of children. The body count would have been higher if they'd been allowed to proceed with their objective. The commission is going to lose their minds over this. Let them. I protected 42 students and 6 teachers from a lethal threat. If they want to prosecute me for effective defense, they can try. Vlad King had arrived as backup during the final moments of combat. He looked at the devastation, melted ground, scorched trees, bodies cooling in the twilight, and spoke quietly. You weren't supposed to be this strong yet. You're 16. Students your age shouldn't be capable of single-handedly eliminating League of Villains assault teams. Then hero education is failing by not properly developing capable students. I trained myself to be strong enough to protect others. That's what heroes should do. Heroes should also show restraint. Restraint against what? Villains who came to kill children? No. Restraint is for situations where threats are ambiguous. These villains were unambiguous. They died for threatening UA's students. End of story. The argument might have continued, but Koda, the boy who hated heroes, emerged from hiding. He'd watched the entire battle from his secret spot in the rocks. He walked directly to Izuku, looked up at him with wide eyes, and asked, "Are you a hero or a monster?" Izuku knelt to the boy's level, his expression softening slightly in a way reserved only for genuine civilians who needed reassurance. I'm someone who protects people from monsters. Whether that makes me a hero or a monster depends on your perspective, but I'll never let villains hurt you or anyone else if I can prevent it. Koda studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. My parents died because heroes couldn't protect them. You're different from those heroes. You actually win. That's the intention. I'm sorry about your parents, Koda. They deserve better than the failure they received. The boy walked away, still processing, but something in his bitter expression had shifted. Aizawa put a hand on Izuku's shoulder. That was the right thing to say. It was the honest thing to say. Hero Society failed that boy's parents. Acknowledging failure is the first step toward fixing it. The training camp was evacuated immediately. The League had found them despite security measures, suggesting either excellent intelligence gathering or someone with information access had betrayed UA's location. Izuku suspected the latter. Someone within Hero Society was feeding information to the League. Finding them would be priority after ensuring student safety. But before evacuation completed, one last complication emerged. A portal opened in the clearing where they'd gathered students. Kurogiri materialized, flanked by Shigaraki Tomura and a man Izuku didn't recognize, someone who radiated danger and intelligence in equal measure. Midoriya Izuku. The unknown man's voice was cultured, calculated. I wanted to meet you in person before circumstances made that impossible. Who are you? You may call me Sensei. I'm the one who's been observing your development with great interest. All for one. The name wasn't spoken, but Izuku understood immediately from the deference Shigaraki showed and the power radiating from the man. Observing me for what purpose? To determine whether you're an asset worth cultivating or a threat worth eliminating. All for one stepped forward, seemingly unbothered by the heroes gathering around them. You're powerful, efficient, and pragmatic. You kill without hesitation. You prioritize results over process. You understand that mercy toward evil is betrayal of the innocent. These are qualities I respect. I'm not interested in your respect. Perhaps not, but you should be interested in what I can offer. Hero Society will turn on you eventually. Your body count is already causing controversy, and it will only increase as you grow stronger. The Commission will restrict you, the public will fear you, and eventually you'll realize that your methods are incompatible with their hypocritical system. You're suggesting I join the League of Villains. I'm suggesting you acknowledge that we're already aligned in philosophy. You eliminate threats permanently. So do we. The only difference is that we're honest about our methods, while Hero Society pretends their hands are clean. Izuku's hands began to smoke. The difference is that I eliminate threats to innocent people. You create those threats. We're nothing alike. Are we not? You've killed over 300 people in less than a year. You operate outside regulations when they inconvenience you. You demonstrate your power to intimidate potential enemies. Tell me, Midoriya, what separates your absolute justice from our absolute power? Purpose. I protect civilians. You exploit them. And when protecting civilians requires actions Hero Society can't accept, when your body count becomes so high that even your staunchest supporters start questioning your methods, when the Commission decides you're too dangerous to remain unsupervised, All for One's smile was hidden behind his mask, but audible in his voice. When that day comes, I'll still be here, offering you the freedom to be exactly what you are. Absolute justice, unshackled by hypocritical morality. That day will never come, because I'll never compromise my principles for convenience, and my principles don't include terrorizing innocent people. We'll see. We'll see. For now, I'll leave you with a question to consider. How many villains will you have to kill before heroes start fearing you more than they fear the villains you eliminate? The portal closed. All for One, Shigaraki, and Kurogiri vanished, but the question lingered. Aizawa approached. That was All for One, the greatest villain in Japan's history. He's interested in you. His interest is irrelevant. He's a villain. Eventually, I'll eliminate him like all the others. Midoriya, you can't... Aizawa stopped, seeing Izuku's expression. You actually think you can kill All for One? I don't think it. I know it. He's just another villain standing between innocent people and safety. Eventually, our paths will cross in combat rather than conversation. When that happens, I'll reduce him to ash. He's defeated All Might multiple times. He has hundreds of quirks. He's survived for over a century by being unkillable. Everyone's killable if you apply enough heat. Physics doesn't care about quirks or longevity. Temperature sufficient to vaporize human flesh will vaporize his flesh too. It's just a matter of generating that temperature and applying it before he can counter, which I can do. Aizawa wanted to argue that confidence bordered on suicidal arrogance, but he'd watched Izuku eliminate 3 Nomus and 23 villains in 4 minutes. He'd seen the boy operate with professional-level efficiency and devastating power. Maybe, just maybe, Midoriya actually could kill All for One when the time came. The Commission's response to the training camp incident was predictably hypocritical. Publicly, we commend young Midoriya's brave defense of his classmates. His quick thinking and powerful quirk prevented potential tragedy. Privately, this child is out of control. 23 bodies. 3 destroyed Nomus, 0 attempt at capture or restraint. He's a liability we can't afford. They called Izuku in for another meeting. Same conference room, same officials, same attempted intimidation that had failed last time. Midoriya, your actions at the training camp have prompted serious concerns. My actions saved 42 students and 6 teachers from a lethal assault. Your actions also resulted in 23 deaths. 23 eliminated threats. Stop calling them deaths like they were innocent casualties. They were villains who came to kill children. They got exactly what they deserved. Madam President's composure cracked slightly. You're 16 years old and you speak about killing people with the casual indifference of a seasoned executioner. That's not normal. That's not healthy. That's concerning. What's concerning is that trained professional heroes struggle to eliminate threats that I can neutralize in minutes. What's concerning is that hero society tolerates a 43% villain recidivism rate. What's concerning is that you're more worried about my efficiency than the villain's continued existence. We're worried about what you're becoming. Power without conscience, without hesitation, without remorse. That's not heroism. That's villainy with better branding. Izuku leaned forward, his green eyes cold as ice. I have conscience. I have hesitation when appropriate. I have clear understanding of right and wrong. What I don't have is guilt for eliminating evil. If that makes me a villain in your eyes, then your definition of heroism is fundamentally broken. The law says I'm legally justified in every kill I've made. Self-defense statutes, defense of others, reasonable force in life-threatening situations. All of my actions fall within legal parameters. You're not questioning my legality. You're questioning whether I should be controlled, whether my effectiveness threatens your comfortable bureaucracy. One of the other officials spoke up. All for One approached you. He tried to recruit you, and according to witness reports, you didn't immediately refuse. I refused unambiguously. I told him we're nothing alike because I protect innocents and he exploits them. If you're suggesting I'm considering his offer, you're either stupid or deliberately misrepresenting the encounter. We're suggesting that the line between hero and villain might be thinner than you think, especially for someone who kills as easily as you do. Izuku stood, the meeting clearly over from his perspective. I'm done justifying my actions to people who've never had to make life or death decisions in combat. I'll continue operating within the law, continue protecting innocent people, and continue eliminating villains who threaten them. If that's unacceptable to you, arrest me. Otherwise, stop wasting my time with philosophical debates while real threats remain active. He left without waiting for dismissal, same as last time. Madam President looked at her colleagues. He's becoming more aggressive in these confrontations because he knows we can't touch him. Arresting Japan's most effective villain killer, a student who's saved hundreds of lives, would be political suicide. The public adores him. Villain activity drops wherever he operates. We need him more than he needs us. Which means he operates without oversight. No, it means he operates without our oversight. UA is still supervising him, and they're doing better than we could. Nezu's managed to keep him mostly within legal boundaries while allowing him operational freedom. Until he crosses a line we can't ignore. Then we hope UA can rein him in before that happens, because if we have to confront Midoriya directly... She trailed off, not wanting to complete the thought. If the Hero Commission had to confront Izuku Midoriya directly, they'd lose. Everyone in that room knew it. Second year at UA began with new challenges and increased scrutiny. The training camp attack had drawn national attention to UA's vulnerability. Security measures were enhanced, hero patrols increased, student supervision tightened. Izuku found the additional restrictions mildly annoying, but understood their necessity. The League had demonstrated willingness to attack schools directly. UA was right to respond with heightened security. His classmates had changed too. The students who'd witnessed him eliminate the training camp attackers now looked at him differently, not just as the strongest student, but as something closer to a natural disaster that happened to be on their side. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Training partners hesitated before engaging him. Even Bakugo, who'd never shown fear before, kept a careful distance. Only Todoroki treated him normally. "They're afraid of you now," Todoroki observed during lunch. "They were afraid before. Now they're just more honest about it." "Does it bother you?" "No. Fear keeps people cautious. Cautious people make fewer mistakes. But it also isolates you." Izuku shrugged. "I was already isolated. Nothing's changed except their acknowledgement of reality." Todoroki was quiet for a moment. "My father wants to meet you." That got Izuku's attention. Why? Because he figured out you're his son. Your performance at the sports festival, your fire-based quirk, the timing of your birth, he put the pieces together. He wants to talk. What does he want to talk about? Redemption, probably. He's been trying to be a better father to me and Fuyumi and Natsuo. Maybe he thinks he can include you in that effort. Izuku's expression hardened. "I'm not interested in his redemption arc. He abandoned us. That decision is permanent. Tell him not to waste his time." "I did. He insisted. Said he needs to face you directly, even if you reject him. Something about deserving that much after avoiding responsibility for 16 years. Fine. Set up a meeting. I'll tell him myself that he means nothing to me." But even as Izuku spoke those words, something in his chest tightened uncomfortably. He'd spent years convincing himself that Endeavor was irrelevant, that the man who'd fathered and abandoned him deserved no emotional investment whatsoever. Now that actually confronting him was imminent, Izuku discovered that completely erasing someone from emotional consideration was harder than he'd thought. The meeting was arranged for a weekend at a private location, a traditional tea house on the outskirts of Tokyo, where they could speak without media interference. Izuku arrived exactly on time, his expression neutral, his body language closed. Endeavor was already there, sitting formally, his costume replaced with civilian clothes that made him look smaller somehow. Todoroki sat between them, neutral mediator, ensuring the conversation didn't immediately combust. "Izuku." Endeavor's voice was careful, measured. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I agreed because Shoto asked, not because I care what you have to say. I understand, and I deserve that hostility. I deserve far worse than hostility. You deserve magma through the chest, but that would upset my mother, so you get to keep breathing." Endeavor flinched. "Your mother, Inko, how is she?" "Don't pretend you care. You told her to get rid of me. You walked away from both of us without a second thought. You don't get to ask about her well-being now." "You're right. I don't. But I'm going to ask anyway because I've spent 16 years trying not to think about the woman I abandoned and the child I told her to eliminate. I need to know if she's okay. She's fine. Better than fine. She raised me alone, worked double shifts to support us, and never once complained about the man who should have been helping her. She's stronger than you'll ever be. Endeavor's hands clenched. I know. I've always known. That's what makes my choice so unforgivable. I chose my ambition over a woman who loved me and a son who could have been remarkable. I am remarkable. Just not for you. I know. I watched the sports festival. I watched you dominate every opponent, watched you demonstrate power that rivals top pro heroes, watched you stand on that podium with absolute confidence. You're everything I wanted to create through quirk marriage and selective breeding. Except you weren't created. You were born naturally from a woman I discarded because her quirk wasn't powerful enough. Is there a point to this confession? Because if you're looking for absolution, you won't find it here. Endeavor met Izuku's cold green eyes directly. I'm not looking for absolution. I'm looking for a chance, just a small chance, to prove I can be the father I should have been from the beginning. You can't be. That chance died 16 years ago when you told Mom to abort me. I know I can't undo that. I know I can't be the father who was there for your first steps, your first words, your first day of school, but I can try to be the father who's here for what comes next, if you'll allow it. Why would I allow it? What could you possibly offer me that I don't already have? Nothing. Absolutely nothing material or practical. I can't give you power. You have more than enough. I can't give you training. You're already beyond what I could teach. I can't give you opportunities. UA and your own reputation provide those. All I can offer is acknowledgement. The acknowledgement that you exist, that you're my son, that I was wrong to abandon you, and that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to prove I can be worthy of the title father, even though I know I never will be. Izuku studied Endeavor carefully, searching for manipulation, for self-interest hidden behind apparent humility, for any sign that this was performance rather than genuine remorse. He found only broken sincerity. You really do regret it. Every single day. Every time I look at Shoto and remember I have another son I've never spoken to, every time I see footage of you and realize how much I missed, every time I think about Inko raising you alone while I focused on my career, every single day I regret that decision more than anything else in my life. Regret doesn't undo consequences. No, it doesn't. But maybe it can start to build something new. Not the father-son relationship we should have had. That's gone forever. But perhaps something smaller. Acknowledgement, respect, the understanding that we're connected by blood even if we're not connected by history. Izuku was silent for a long moment. Part of him wanted to walk away, maintain the cold indifference he'd cultivated for years, refuse to give Endeavor anything that might ease his guilt. But another part, the part that still remembered being 4 years old and wondering why he didn't have a father like other kids, wanted something he couldn't quite articulate. If I agree to this, and I'm not saying I am, there are conditions. Anything. First, you don't get to call yourself my father until you've earned it. Right now, you're just Todoroki Enji, the man who contributed genetics to my existence. Nothing more. Understood. Second, my mother is off limits unless she chooses to contact you herself. You don't approach her. Don't send messages. Don't attempt any form of reconciliation without her explicit permission. She suffered enough because of you. I won't let you cause her more pain trying to ease your conscience. Agreed. Completely agreed. Third, this doesn't change how I operate. I won't soften my methods to please you. I won't kill fewer villains to make you comfortable. I won't compromise my principles because the number 2 hero thinks I'm too brutal. I am what I am, and you don't get to shape that. I wouldn't try. You've become who you are without me. I have no right to interfere with that. Fourth and final, if you ever hurt my mother again, intentionally or accidentally, I will end you. Blood relation means nothing against that. Are we clear? Crystal clear. And thank you for even considering this. Izuku stood to leave. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because holding on to anger takes energy. I'd rather spend eliminating villains. If letting you try to be a father eases that burden, fine. But don't mistake this for forgiveness. You haven't earned that. You probably never will. I know, but I'll try anyway. Todoroki watched this exchange with quiet understanding. His half-brother was offering Endeavor something Shoto himself had struggled to give. The chance to prove change was possible. Whether Endeavor would succeed remained uncertain, but the possibility now existed where none had before. Izuku left the tea house with complicated emotions he didn't fully understand. He'd given Endeavor a chance when he'd sworn never to do so. He'd acknowledged a connection he'd spent years denying. Why? The answer came when he arrived home and found his mother waiting with dinner. "How did it go?" Inko asked gently. "I gave him a chance. A very small, very conditional chance." "Why? You've always said you wanted nothing to do with him." Izuku sat beside her, accepting the bowl of rice she offered. "Because I realized something today. Holding on to absolute rejection was just another form of letting him control me. By refusing to even consider his existence, I was giving him power over my emotions. Letting him try to prove himself, and probably fail, takes that power away." Inko squeezed his hand. "You're wiser than I was at your age. I spent years angry at Enji for abandoning us. That anger ate at me, made me bitter. You're choosing a different path. I'm choosing the practical path. Anger is wasteful. If he can prove he's changed, fine. If he can't, I'll have lost nothing by letting him try. And if he does prove it, if he genuinely becomes the father he should have been, then I'll acknowledge that people can change, but I'm not holding my breath. Statistics show that behavioral patterns established over decades rarely shift permanently. He'll probably revert to his old prioritization of heroic ambition over personal relationships. When that happens, I'll cut him off permanently." Inko smiled sadly. "You talk about your father with the same clinical detachment you use for analyzing villain behavior. That's because I don't emotionally differentiate between him and any other person who needs to prove their value. He's on probation. If he proves worthy of consideration, he gets consideration. If not, he gets discarded. Simple." "That's very cold, Izuku." "It's very practical. Emotions cloud judgment. Endeavor abandoned us, that's fact. Whether he's changed is uncertain. I'll assess based on evidence, not on hope or familial obligation." They ate together in comfortable silence, but Inko noticed that her son kept glancing at his phone, checking for messages he wouldn't acknowledge expecting. Maybe Izuku wasn't quite as emotionally detached from his father as he claimed. The world kept turning, and Izuku kept eliminating villains. His second year at UA was marked by increased villain activity. The League of Villains was growing bolder, organizing larger attacks, targeting heroes more systematically. And wherever they struck, Izuku was deployed as UA's countermeasure. The pattern became predictable. League attacks, Izuku eliminates them, League retreats, repeat. Each encounter reduced their numbers, damaged their resources, and proved that overwhelming force properly applied was superior to elaborate villain planning. But All for One was learning too. He'd stopped sending disposable villains and started testing Izuku with increasingly powerful opponents designed specifically to counter magma-based quirks. A villain with water manipulation so precise he could cool magma before it connected. Eliminated by Izuku raising the temperature beyond what water could absorb. A villain with hyperthermia resistance and fire absorption. Eliminated by Izuku using physical combat enhanced by magma, crushing the villain's skull directly rather than relying on heat alone. A villain who could teleport short distances, making him nearly impossible to hit. Eliminated by Izuku flooding an entire area with magma, removing all safe teleport destinations simultaneously. Each test taught All for One something about Izuku's capabilities and limitations. Each test taught Izuku something about how villains would try to counter him. Their inevitable confrontation was approaching. Both sides knew it. Both sides prepared. But before that confrontation could occur, another crisis emerged. Hero society itself fractured. The debate about Izuku's methods had reached critical mass. Half the population viewed him as the most effective hero of his generation. Crime rates plummeted in areas where he operated. Villain organizations collapsed before his overwhelming power, and innocent civilians lived without fear. The other half viewed him as a dangerous vigilante who killed without due process, who operated outside proper authority, who represented everything wrong with unchecked power. The tipping point came when Izuku eliminated an entire villain organization in Osaka. 37 villains, 0 survivors, 0 civilian casualties, mission duration 14 minutes. The public response was explosive. Supporters, this is what heroism should look like. Permanent removal of threats. Absolute protection for innocent people. Opponents, he killed 37 people without trial, without arrest, without giving them any chance to surrender. That's not justice. That's execution. The Hero Commission called emergency sessions. The media ran 24-hour coverage analyzing every aspect of Izuku's methods. Social media became a battleground between those who worshipped his efficiency and those who feared his power. UA shielded him from the worst of it, but even Nezu couldn't completely protect Izuku from the consequences of his choices. The breaking point came when a civilian advocacy group filed formal charges: unlawful killing, excessive force, operation outside license parameters, vigilantism. The charges were legally weak. Every kill Izuku had made fell within self-defense statutes, but politically devastating. Hero Society was forcing a choice: accept restrictions on his methods or face prosecution that would destroy his hero career before it began. All Might visited Izuku that evening, his skeletal form visible, his expression troubled. Young Midoriya, you've seen the charges. I have. The Commission wants me to convince you to accept behavioral modifications: reduced violence, mandatory supervision, restricted deployment, psychological evaluation. And if I refuse, they'll proceed with prosecution. Even if you're found not guilty, which is likely given the legal justification for your actions, the trial will damage your reputation beyond repair. You'll never get a hero license. Your career will end before it begins. Izuku was silent, processing this calculated attack on his future. They're using the legal system as a weapon because they can't control me through force. Yes, and you're here to convince me to submit. I'm here to help you see that sometimes strategic retreat is wiser than absolute confrontation. You can accept modifications now, prove over time that your methods are necessary, and gradually shift public opinion. Or you can fight this and lose everything you've worked for. Izuku looked at All Might with cold green eyes. You want me to compromise my principles for political convenience? I want you to survive long enough to make a difference. You're 16. You have decades of hero work ahead of you. Don't throw that away over pride. It's not pride. It's conviction. If I compromise now, I validate their argument that my methods are wrong. I prove that overwhelming force applied to eliminate threats is somehow less moral than capture and imprisonment with 43% recidivism. I legitimize a broken system by accepting its restrictions. So what will you do? I'll fight the charges in court. I'll prove legally and morally that every villain I killed deserved that fate. And I'll demonstrate that Hero Society needs to evolve beyond its comfortable compromise with evil. All Might slumped in his chair. You're going to lose more than you gain. Maybe. But I'll lose with my principles intact. That's more than most heroes can claim. The trial began 3 weeks later. The courtroom was packed with media, heroes, civilians, and villain sympathizers, all eager to see whether Japan's most controversial student would be convicted or vindicated. The prosecution presented their case. Izuku Midoriya had killed over 400 people in 18 months. While legally justified by self-defense statutes, the pattern demonstrated excessive force, lack of restraint, and dangerous disregard for villain rights. The accused treats villains as targets to be eliminated rather than citizens who've made mistakes. He shows no remorse, no attempt at rehabilitation, no belief that people can change. This isn't heroism, this is systematic execution. The defense, hired by UA and funded by Nezu's discretionary budget, presented their counter case. Izuku Midoriya has saved over 2,000 lives through his actions. Every villain he's eliminated was actively engaged in lethal threats against innocent civilians. His excessive force has resulted in 0 civilian casualties and the dismantling of 19 major criminal organizations. His lack of restraint is actually perfect tactical precision applied to permanent threat removal. This isn't execution. This is heroism that prioritizes innocent lives over villain rehabilitation. Witnesses testified. Civilians who'd been saved by Izuku's intervention, tearfully describing how he'd eliminated villains who were seconds away from killing them. Heroes who'd worked alongside Izuku, praising his efficiency while expressing concern about his methods. Psychologists who evaluated Izuku, finding him fully competent, fully rational, fully aware of his actions' moral weight. Villains' family members who'd lost loved ones to Izuku's magma, claiming their relatives deserved a chance at redemption. The trial stretched over 2 weeks, every moment broadcast nationally, every argument dissected by media analysts. And through it all, Izuku sat calmly in the defendant's chair, his expression neutral, his conviction unwavering. When finally called to testify, he spoke with Akainu's absolute certainty. I kill villains because they threaten innocent people. I don't enjoy it. I don't celebrate it. I don't treat it lightly. But I don't apologize for it either. Every villain I've eliminated was actively engaged in lethal threats against civilians who couldn't defend themselves. My choice was simple. Remove the threat permanently, or allow them to potentially hurt innocents in the future. I chose to protect the innocent. I'll make that choice every time. The prosecutor pressed, but what about rehabilitation? What about the possibility that villains could reform? Rehabilitation has a 43% failure rate. That means 43 out of every 100 villains who are rehabilitated return to criminal activity. Each one of those recidivists hurts more innocent people. My method has a 0% recidivism rate. 0. The villains I eliminate never hurt anyone again. Ever. Which method better protects innocent civilians? But you're denying them their rights. They denied their victims' rights when they chose to attack innocent people. Rights are not unconditional. When you use your freedom to harm others, you forfeit your claim to that freedom. That's not controversial. That's the foundation of every legal system in human history. So you're saying villains don't deserve due process? I'm saying that due process is appropriate for crimes that don't involve immediate lethal threats. Theft, fraud, property damage, arrest them, try them, imprison them. But active assault, murder, terrorism, when someone is literally in the process of killing innocent people, waiting for due process means more innocent deaths. In those moments, permanent elimination is the only moral choice. The prosecutor tried a different angle. You've killed over 400 people. Doesn't that bother you? I've killed over 400 villains who were threatening innocent lives. The distinction matters. And no, it doesn't bother me. What would bother me is knowing I had the power to prevent civilian deaths and chose not to use it because removing threats permanently made people uncomfortable. That's sociopathic. No. Sociopathy would be killing without purpose, without discrimination, without consideration for innocent life. Everything I do is specifically designed to protect innocent people. That's the opposite of sociopathy. That's the definition of heroism. The trial concluded with closing arguments. Prosecution. Midoriya Izuku represents everything dangerous about unchecked power. He's judge, jury, and executioner. He operates outside proper authority. He must be restricted before he becomes the very threat he claims to fight. Defense. Midoriya Izuku represents the evolution hero society desperately needs. He's effective, efficient, and unwavering in his commitment to protecting innocent people. The only thing he must be restricted from is being prevented from saving lives. The jury deliberated for 36 hours. When they returned, the verdict was delivered by the jury foreman. On all charges of unlawful killing, not guilty. On all charges of excessive force, not guilty. On all charges of vigilantism, not guilty. The jury finds that Midoriya Izuku's actions fall within legal parameters of self-defense and defense of others. His methods, while controversial, are justified by the immediate lethal threats he faced and the innocent lives he protected. The courtroom erupted, half in cheers, half in outrage. Izuku sat calmly, unsurprised. He'd known the law was on his side. The trial had never been about legality, it had been about politics. And politically, he'd won. The Hero Commission was forced to acknowledge publicly that Izuku's methods, while extreme, were legally justified. They couldn't restrict him without changing laws that protected all heroes' right to use lethal force in life-threatening situations. But they also made their position clear in private. You've won legally. But politically, you've made powerful enemies. Watch your back, Midoriya. Not every fight can be won in courtrooms. Izuku's response was characteristically blunt. Then I'll win those fights with magma instead of lawyers. Either way, I'll win. The trial's conclusion marked a shift in hero society. Some heroes began openly supporting Izuku's methods, arguing that rehabilitation's failure rate justified more permanent solutions to the villain problem. Other heroes condemned him more loudly, claiming he represented a slide toward authoritarian heroism that would undermine civil rights. Civilians remained divided, but crime rates told their own story. Areas where Izuku operated saw dramatic decreases in villain activity. Not just arrests, but actual elimination of criminal organizations. The League of Villains recognized that Izuku had become a greater threat than they'd anticipated. All for One decided the time for testing was over. If they wanted to achieve their goals, Midoriya Izuku had to die. The next phase of Hero Society's evolution was about to begin, and it would be written in magma and ash. The remainder of Izuku's second year at UA passed in an uneasy balance. He continued training, continued growing stronger, continued eliminating villains whenever they crossed his path. But the trial had changed something fundamental. Hero Society could no longer pretend his methods were a temporary phase that would be corrected through education. This was who Izuku was. Absolute justice, overwhelming power, zero tolerance for villainy. Accept it or oppose it. There was no middle ground. Endeavor tried to maintain the fragile connection Izuku had permitted. They met occasionally, awkward conversations over coffee, brief discussions about hero work, Enji's careful attempts to demonstrate he was trying to change. Izuku remained skeptical, but allowed the process to continue. Not because he'd forgiven Endeavor, but because his mother had quietly asked him to give his father a genuine chance. For Inko, Izuku would endure anything, even reliation attempts with the man who'd abandoned them. "You're changing," Todoroki observed during one training session. "How?" "You're less cold, still distant, but less actively hostile, especially toward our father." "I'm being practical. Maintaining absolute hostility requires energy better spent elsewhere. If Endeavor wants to prove he can be a decent father, fine. If he fails, I'll discard him without regret. Either way, I've lost nothing." That's still a very analytical approach to family relationships. "Would you prefer I pretend to have emotions I don't feel? Yet that I force myself to care because society expects sons to love their fathers?" Todoroki was quiet for a moment. "No, I suppose your honesty is better than false emotion, but sometimes I wonder if you've shut down so many feelings that you've forgotten how to access them at all." "I feel things for people who've earned it. My mother, primarily. You, to some extent, you've proven yourself reliable and honest, a few others in passing, but random emotional attachment just because someone shares my genetics? That's illogical. And yet you keep meeting with him. Because my mother asked me to, not because I care whether Endeavor redeems himself." But Todoroki noticed that Izuku never missed their scheduled meetings with Endeavor, never canceled, never cut them short. For someone who claimed not to care, Izuku was remarkably consistent in maintaining contact. Maybe his half-brother was more conflicted than he admitted. Third year began with new challenges. Class 1A became Class 3A, now senior students responsible for mentoring younger classmen and taking on increasingly dangerous hero assignments. Izuku's reputation had grown to the point where villain organizations actively avoided operating in regions where he was known to patrol. His body count had exceeded 600. His effectiveness was statistically unmatched, but All for One was preparing his endgame. The man had spent over a century building his power, accumulating quirks, creating the infrastructure for a villain renaissance that would overthrow Hero Society's comfortable equilibrium. Izuku Midoriya was the greatest threat to those plans. A hero who killed without hesitation, who couldn't be corrupted or convinced, who possessed power approaching the level of top heroes despite being only 18 years old. All for One decided the best way to eliminate Izuku was to force him into a moral crisis that would either break his conviction or turn him into a true villain. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. All for One would orchestrate simultaneous attacks across multiple cities. Each attack would put civilians in lethal danger. Each attack would require Izuku to choose which civilians to save and which to let die, because even someone as powerful as Midoriya Izuku couldn't be everywhere at once. The attacks came on a Saturday afternoon. Coordinated assaults on Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and Hosu City simultaneously. Nomus, high-level villains, large-scale destruction. Thousands of civilians in immediate danger. Heroes deployed to each location, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Izuku received the emergency alerts while at home with his mother. 4 cities, 4 crises, hundreds of potential casualties at each location. He couldn't save them all. The realization hit like a physical blow. For the first time in his hero career, Izuku faced a situation where his power wasn't sufficient. He could save 1 city, maybe 2 if he moved fast enough, but the other 2 would suffer massive casualties before other heroes could respond effectively. All for One's message came through a hacked emergency broadcast. Choose Midoriya. Which civilians deserve your protection? Which ones will you abandon to die? Show me your absolute justice when you can't save everyone. Inko grabbed his hand. Izuku, what will you do? He looked at his mother, then at the display showing 4 cities burning simultaneously, then back to her. I'll prioritize based on casualty potential and hero support availability. Tokyo has the most heroes. They can hold longer. Osaka has the highest civilian concentration in the attack zone. I'll go there first, eliminate the threats, then move to wherever needs me most next. And the cities you don't reach in time will suffer casualties I can't prevent, but suffering some casualties is better than suffering all of them. He transformed, magma already flowing across his body. I love you, Mom. I'll be back. Then he was gone, leaving Inko standing alone in their apartment, praying that her son's choices wouldn't break him. Osaka was hell. 3 nomas, 47 villains, thousands of civilians trapped in the attack zone. Buildings collapsed, fires raged, and heroes fought desperately to evacuate civilians before the villains could kill them. Izuku arrived like a meteor, his magma form glowing against the smoke-filled sky. Ryusei Kazan! Magma fists rained from above, dozens of them, each one targeting a specific villain location mapped from emergency broadcasts. Screams and explosions filled the air as League members died before they understood what was happening. The Nomas charged him simultaneously, coordinated and strategic. Die, Funka! 3 massive magma fists, each larger than a building, slammed into the 3 Nomas with enough force to crater the street. Izuku followed immediately, not giving them time to regenerate. His hands closed around exposed brain cases, temperature spiking to levels that boiled flesh faster than regeneration could compensate. All 3 Nomas died within 90 seconds. The remaining villains tried to retreat. Izuku wouldn't allow it. Inugami Guren! Magma hounds hunted down fleeing villains, tore through defensive quirks, eliminated threats with brutal efficiency. Some villains tried to use civilians as shields. Izuku's precision targeting burned through the villains without touching the hostages they held. Osaka secured. Total elapsed time, 4 minutes, 17 seconds. Izuku checked his phone. Hosu City had the next highest casualty rate. He launched toward it immediately, magma propulsion creating a trail of fire across the sky. Hosu was worse. The heroes stationed there were younger, less experienced. They'd been overwhelmed quickly, pushed into defensive positions while villains hunted civilians systematically. Izuku arrived to find bodies in the streets, heroes and civilians both, killed in the 12 minutes it had taken him to secure Osaka and travel here, his jaw clenched. These deaths were on him. He'd chosen Osaka first. These people had paid the price for that choice. No time for guilt. Save who could still be saved. Kazan Kabe! Magma walls erupted throughout the city, cutting villains off from civilians, creating safe zones where heroes could evacuate the wounded. The temperature in villain zones spiked to lethal levels. Villains screamed as they burned, their quirks useless against heat that exceeded anything human flesh could withstand. Izuku moved through the carnage methodically, eliminating every villain he encountered. No mercy, no hesitation, no second chances. These monsters had killed civilians while waiting for him to arrive. They deserved worse than quick deaths, but efficient elimination was more important than vengeance. Hosu secured. Total elapsed time, 6 minutes, 41 seconds. 2 cities remaining. Kyoto or Tokyo? His phone showed Tokyo was holding better. All Might had arrived and was keeping the Nomas at bay. Kyoto was collapsing, its heroes overwhelmed. Izuku chose Kyoto, but the choice meant more Tokyo casualties while he was elsewhere. More deaths he could have prevented if he'd prioritized differently. The weight of those choices pressed against his chest as he flew toward Kyoto, magma trailing behind him like blood. Kyoto was a massacre. Musha fought alone in the city center, his armor cracked, his movements slowing. The old hero had held the line for 14 minutes, saved hundreds of civilians, and was now dying from accumulated injuries. Musha! Izuku landed beside him, magma already forming into shields against incoming attacks. Midoriya, took you long enough. Tokyo and Osaka, I know, you can't be everywhere, but you're here now. Finish this. Izuku looked at his first mentor, saw the blood pooling beneath him, understood that Musha was dying. I'll get you to a hospital. No time. Villains are targeting the evacuation center at the Cultural Hall. 300 civilians, protected by 2 exhausted heroes. They won't last 5 more minutes. Go. But you. I'm already have been since that Nomu crushed my chest 9 minutes ago. I'm just too stubborn to fall down yet. Go. Izuku went. He arrived at the Cultural Hall just as villains breached the perimeter. Civilians huddled inside, children crying, adults shielding them with their own bodies, heroes bleeding as they tried to hold the doors. Keinomura! A wall of flames surrounded the entire building, creating a barrier nothing could cross. Villains who tried to pass through ignited instantly, their screams brief and final. Izuku stood in the center of his flames, a silhouette of absolute power, and spoke with Akainu's cold certainty. This building is under my protection. Any villain who approaches will die. Those are the only terms. Villains stared at him, calculating whether they could overwhelm him through numbers. Izuku raised both arms. Ryusei Kazan. The sky darkened. Magma fists manifested by the hundreds hanging in the air above Kyoto like a constellation of destruction. Last chance to retreat. After this, there are only corpses. Some villains ran. Smart ones. The rest died when magma rain fell across the city, systematically eliminating every villain who'd participated in the attack. Kyoto secured. Total elapsed time, 7 minutes, 53 seconds. Izuku's phone showed Tokyo. All Might had won. The crisis was over. Casualties were minimal thanks to the symbol of peace's intervention. But Hosu had 37 civilian deaths. Kyoto had 62. Osaka had 18. 117 people dead because Izuku couldn't save them all. He returned to Musha's position, found the old hero had finally fallen, his body cooling in the street where he'd held the line until reinforcements arrived. Izuku knelt beside him, closed his eyes, and spoke quietly. You taught me precision. You taught me efficiency. You taught me that overwhelming power means nothing without tactical application. Thank you, Musha. The old hero didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Was gone. Izuku stood, his magma form flickering with exhaustion and emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. 117 deaths, 1 mentor lost, 4 cities saved, but not without cost. All for One's voice came through another hacked broadcast. This is what absolute justice looks like when you can't be everywhere. This is what happens when your power isn't sufficient. This is the reality you'll face every day, choosing who lives and who dies. How does it feel, Midoriya, knowing that 117 people died because you couldn't save them? Izuku looked directly at the nearest camera, knowing All for One was watching. It feels like motivation. Motivation to become strong enough that next time I can save them all. Strong enough that villains like you don't dare attempt this kind of coordinated attack. Strong enough that my mere existence prevents villain activity rather than just responding to it. He raised one magma fist toward the camera. You wanted to break me by forcing me to choose. You failed. All you've done is prove that I need to become even stronger. Strong enough that there's no choice. I just save everyone. Thank you for the lesson. Next time we meet, I'll demonstrate what I learned. The broadcast cut to static. Izuku returned to UA in silence, his body aching, his mind processing 117 failures alongside thousands of successes. The aftermath of the coordinated attacks dominated news for weeks. Izuku had saved 3 cities, eliminated over 200 villains, prevented thousands of deaths, but the 117 casualties were treated as his failure, evidence that even the strongest hero couldn't protect everyone. Public opinion shifted again. Some people argued this proved Izuku's methods were insufficient, that he'd prioritized killing villains over saving civilians, that his brutal efficiency had somehow contributed to the death toll. Others argued the opposite, that Izuku had prevented catastrophic casualties through his overwhelming response, that the 117 deaths would have been thousands without his intervention. Izuku ignored all of it. He'd learned something crucial from that day. Individual power, no matter how overwhelming, had limits. Being the strongest wasn't enough. Being the fastest wasn't enough. Being the most efficient wasn't enough. He needed to evolve beyond individual heroism to systemic impact. The first step was obvious. Izuku requested a meeting with the Hero Commission. Not to defend himself, not to argue about his methods, but to propose something radical. "You want to what?" Madam President looked at him incredulously. "I want to establish a rapid response division specifically designed for high-casualty villain incidents. Heroes with mobility quirks, overwhelming offensive capabilities, and tactical training. Deployed immediately when large-scale attacks occur. Coordinated through central command so we can cover multiple crisis points simultaneously." That's essentially a hero army. It's a force multiplication strategy. I can't be everywhere, but a team of heroes with complementary quirks trained for rapid deployment and overwhelming response could be. The coordinated attacks prove that villains are evolving. Hero society needs to evolve faster. The commission officials exchanged glances. This was Midoriya Izuku proposing systematic reform. The same student who'd been on trial for excessive force months ago was now suggesting hero military organization. Who would lead this division? Initially, me, until I've trained suitable replacements who understand overwhelming force isn't just about power, it's about applying that power with perfect efficiency to minimize casualties. You're 18 years old. I'm also the hero with the highest villain elimination rate, lowest civilian casualty rate, and fastest response time in Japan. Age is irrelevant compared to results. Madam President leaned back in her chair. You've been pushing for systemic change since you entered UA. More efficient villain elimination, reduced legal protections for active criminals, permanent removal of repeat offenders. Now you want to fundamentally restructure hero deployment. You're trying to reshape hero society in your image. I'm trying to fix a broken system before more civilians die because heroes weren't fast enough, weren't strong enough, or weren't willing to do what's necessary to stop villains permanently. And you think your vision of hero society is the correct one? Izuku met her eyes with absolute certainty. I think my vision produces quantifiably better results. Lower casualty rates, faster threat elimination, higher civilian survival rates. If you have data suggesting a different approach works better, present it. Otherwise, stop letting politics override practical improvement. The meeting concluded without immediate resolution, but Izuku had planted the seed. The commission would resist initially, they always did, but statistics would eventually force them to acknowledge that his methods worked. He just needed to keep proving it. The rest of third year focused on preparation. Izuku trained harder than ever before, pushing his magma abilities toward new limits. He developed techniques for faster deployment, larger scale attacks, more precise targeting. He studied logistics, coordination, rapid response protocols. He was building the foundation for the hero he needed to become, not just the strongest individual, but the catalyst for systemic reform. The final war was coming. Everyone with tactical sense knew it. All for One was building towards something massive, something that would make the coordinated city attacks look like preliminary testing. When that day came, Izuku intended to be ready. Not just to fight, but to completely annihilate whatever threat emerged. His relationship with Endeavor had evolved strangely over the year. The awkward meetings had become less awkward. The forced conversations Endeavor had proven through consistent effort and genuine change that he was trying to be a better person. Izuku still didn't love him, still didn't call him father, still maintained emotional distance, but he'd stopped actively despising him. That was progress. Todoroki noticed during one family dinner, Endeavor had cautiously invited both his sons, and Izuku had cautiously accepted. You're different with him now, Todoroki observed afterward. He's proven he can maintain behavioral change for over a year. That's statistically significant. It's more than that. You actually listen when he talks. You don't immediately discount everything he says. Because he's demonstrated he understands his failures and is actively working to correct them, that deserves minimal acknowledgement. You're starting to forgive him. Izuku paused, considering that. No, I'm starting to accept that people can change if properly motivated. Forgiveness requires more than that. but acceptance is a step. The dinner had been strange. Endeavor trying too hard to be paternal, Todoroki cautiously engaging, Fuyumi facilitating conversation, Natsuo maintaining angry silence, and Izuku observing everything with analytical detachment. But it was something. More than nothing. A foundation that might eventually become actual relationship. For his mother's sake, Izuku was willing to try. Inko had never stopped loving Enji, not completely. Seeing her two important men attempt reconciliation gave her hope Izuku couldn't bring himself to crush. So he endured family dinners, accepted Endeavor's gradually less awkward attempts at fatherhood, and allowed the possibility that blood relation might eventually mean something beyond genetic contribution. But privately, Izuku knew the real test would come during the final war. When everything was on the line, when Endeavor faced lethal danger, would Izuku save him? Or would he let the man who abandoned him die? He didn't know the answer yet. The final war began on a Wednesday in March, 3 weeks before Izuku's graduation from UA. The League of Villains, reinforced by All for One's full power and dozens of high-end nomis, launched simultaneous assaults on 6 major cities and UA itself. This wasn't testing. This wasn't preliminary. This was the all-or-nothing gambit to overthrow hero society. Every hero in Japan was deployed. Every student capable of combat was mobilized. This was total war between hero society and organized villainy. Izuku stood in UA's courtyard, watching nomus pour through portals while villains attacked from every direction. "All students, fall back to defensive positions," Aizawa shouted. Izuku transformed, his magma form glowing brighter than ever before. He'd been preparing for this moment for 3 years. He'd developed every technique, maximized every application, refined every detail. Now it was time to prove that absolute justice, properly applied, could defeat even the greatest evil. Respectfully declining defensive positions, Sensei, I'm ending this. He launched skyward, magma propulsion creating a pillar of fire that reached the clouds. Ryusei Kazan! The sky went dark, magma fists manifested by the thousands, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands, hanging above UA like an artificial meteor storm. Everyone on the battlefield stopped, staring upward at the apocalyptic display. "This is what absolute justice looks like," Izuku declared, his voice carrying across the battlefield with Akainu's absolute authority. "Every villain who came here today will die. Every Nomu will be destroyed. Every threat to innocent people will be permanently removed. This is not a battle. This is eradication." The magma storm fell. It rained down across UA's grounds with perfect precision. Each projectile targeting a specific villain or Nomu, guided by Izuku's perfect awareness of the battlefield. Explosions of molten rock filled the air, temperatures spiked beyond what any defense could withstand, and villains died by the dozen. The Nomus tried to charge through the storm. Their regeneration couldn't keep up with the overwhelming sustained heat. Their enhanced strength meant nothing when the ground beneath them melted. Their shock absorption failed against temperatures that exceeded material tolerances. Within 3 minutes, UA's grounds were cleared of every villain and Nomu. The only figures left standing were heroes and students, protected by Izuku's perfect targeting control. But the battle was just beginning. Izuku's phone showed 5 other cities under similar assault. He couldn't save all of them simultaneously. He'd learned that lesson during the coordinated attacks. But he'd also learned how to mitigate that limitation. All Might, Endeavor, deploy to Tokyo. Hawks, Best Genist, cover Osaka. Mirko, edge a shot, handle Kyoto. I'll take Hosu, and then support wherever needed. He was coordinating hero deployment, directing the most powerful heroes in Japan like pieces on a battlefield chessboard. "Who authorized you to give orders?" someone demanded. "Results authorize me. Follow the deployment or explain to civilian casualties why your ego was more important than their lives." No one argued further. Izuku's record spoke for itself. He launched toward Hosu, leaving UA's defense to the remaining heroes. Hosu was hell. Not because the villains were particularly numerous. He'd faced worse. Not because the Nomus were especially strong. He'd killed dozens before. Because All for One was there. The man who'd ruled villain society for over a century stood in Hosu's city center, surrounded by destruction, waiting for Izuku. Midoriya Izuku, Japan's youngest mass murderer, over 600 confirmed kills, the boy who thinks absolute justice justifies absolute violence. Izuku landed 50 meters away, magma dripping from his hands. All for one, Japan's oldest villain, responsible for thousands of deaths, the man who thinks power justifies any atrocity. We're very similar, you and I. We're nothing alike. I kill to protect innocence. You kill because you can. And yet you've killed more people in 3 years than most villains manage in a lifetime. How long before Hero Society realizes you're more dangerous than the villains you eliminate? Hero Society already knows I'm dangerous. Dangerous to villains. Dangerous to anyone who threatens innocent people. That's exactly what heroes should be. All for One's laugh was genuinely amused. You really believe that? You've convinced yourself that your brutality is justified, your murders are heroic, your absolute intolerance is righteous. You're exactly what I wanted to create, a hero so extreme that Hero Society will be forced to acknowledge its hypocrisy. You didn't create me. You just gave me targets. Then allow me to give you one more target. Me. Let's see if your absolute justice is sufficient to kill Japan's greatest villain. The battle began. All for One attacked with combination quirks, air manipulation to suffocate, strength enhancement to crush, regeneration to survive, and dozens of others accumulated over his century of existence. Izuku countered with pure, overwhelming power. Daifunka! His magma fist, larger than a building, slammed into All for One with enough force to level city blocks. The villain used multiple defensive quirks to survive, but the heat alone burned away his outer layer of flesh. Impressive, but insufficient. All for One retaliated with a combination attack that ripped chunks from buildings and launched them at supersonic speeds. Izuku's Logia intangibility let the projectiles pass through harmlessly. Physical attacks won't work. You should know that. Then let's try something different. All for One activated a quirk that manipulated temperature, tried to cool Izuku's magma, freeze his attacks before they could connect. Izuku responded by raising his temperature beyond what the quirk could compensate for. 3,000 degrees, 5,000, 8,000. Heat that approached the surface of the sun itself. All for One's temperature manipulation quirk failed. His heat resistance quirk failed. His regeneration struggled to keep up with flesh vaporizing faster than it could heal. You're burning me faster than I can recover. That's new. That's what happens when you fight someone who doesn't hold back, who doesn't show mercy, who understands that some threats need to be completely eradicated. Izuku pressed the advantage. Inugami Guren. Magma hounds, each one shaped with perfect precision, attacked All for One from multiple angles. The villain tried to use multiple quirks to defend, but the overwhelming sustained assault forced him backward. You're strong, Midoriya. Stronger than I calculated. But strength alone won't defeat me. I have contingencies, backup plans, regeneration that can heal anything short of complete disintegration. Then I'll disintegrate you completely. Izuku's entire body transformed into magma, his temperature rising to levels that made the air shimmer, that turned concrete to liquid, that represented the absolute pinnacle of his power. Kazan Metsubo, his ultimate technique. Volcanic extinction. Everything he'd been developing in secret, every increase in power, every refinement, and channeled into a single devastating attack. A column of magma erupted from the ground beneath All for One, engulfing him completely. The temperature inside exceeded 15,000 degrees, hotter than any natural volcano, hotter than most industrial processes, hot enough to vaporize virtually any material. All for One screamed as his body disintegrated, quirks failing one by one, regeneration unable to compete with destruction occurring at atomic levels. But even as he died, he laughed. You've proven my point, Midoriya. You're willing to kill without hesitation, to use overwhelming force without restraint, to eliminate threats through complete annihilation. That's not heroism. That's villainy that targets villains. Hero Society will realize that eventually. And when they do, you'll understand that we were always the same. Wrong. My final answer. Izuku maintained the attack until All for One's body was completely vaporized, until nothing remained except ash and melted concrete. The greatest villain in Japan's history was dead, but his words lingered. Izuku stood in the crater he'd created, temperature slowly returning to normal, and wondered if All for One had been right about one thing: whether Hero Society would ultimately accept someone who killed as efficiently as he protected. The answer would come soon enough. The final war's aftermath was complex. All for One was dead. The League of Villains was destroyed. Dozens of high-level villains were eliminated. Hero Society had won its greatest victory in decades, but the cost was significant. 237 heroes died during the battles across 6 cities. Thousands of civilians were killed before villains could be stopped. Infrastructure damage exceeded any previous crisis. And Izuku's final confrontation with All for One had been broadcast live, showing him literally vaporize Japan's most infamous villain without hesitation or remorse. Public reaction was predictable. Half the population celebrated him as the hero who defeated All for One, who demonstrated that overwhelming power properly applied could eliminate even centuries-old threats. The other half viewed his final attack as proof that he'd crossed the line from hero to something darker, an executioner who happened to target villains. The Hero Commission called him in for what they promised would be the final evaluation of his methods. You killed All for One by vaporizing him completely. That's not defense. That's not even combat. That's execution designed to ensure complete obliteration. Izuku sat calmly across from them. All for One had regeneration quirks that could heal anything short of complete disintegration. Incomplete elimination would have allowed him to survive and return. I chose the only method that guaranteed permanent removal of the threat. You could have captured him. No, I couldn't. He'd escaped capture dozens of times over his century of existence. He had contingency plans, backup bodies, stored quirks. The only way to eliminate him permanently was complete disintegration, which I achieved. By using a technique that represents the most extreme application of lethal force we've ever recorded from a hero. By using the appropriate level of force required to eliminate Japan's greatest threat. Results justify methods. Madam President looked exhausted. You're graduating UA in 2 weeks. You'll receive a hero license automatically based on your performance during the final war. But the Commission is imposing one condition. You'll be monitored, not restricted. Not prevented from acting, but monitored. Your deployments will be tracked, your actions documented, your methods reviewed. Why? I'm legally justified in every action I've taken, because we need to know if you can be trusted with unlimited authority. Because Hero Society is changing because of you, and we need to understand whether that change is sustainable. Because you've killed over 700 people. 743 villains who threatened innocent lives. And at some point, we need to know if you can ever show restraint again. Izuku considered this. Monitoring was inconvenient, but not restrictive. He could work within those parameters. Acceptable. But understand this. Monitoring me won't change my methods. I'll continue operating with the same absolute justice I've demonstrated since I started. If that eventually makes you uncomfortable enough to try restricting me, I'll operate independently. The choice is yours. We understand. And we're choosing to trust that you'll prove we're wrong to worry. You are wrong, but I'll prove it anyway. Graduation day arrived with perfect weather and a sense of profound change. Class 3A stood in UA's auditorium, about to receive their hero licenses and begin their professional careers. 3 years ago, they'd been uncertain students. Now they were certified heroes ready to shape society. Izuku stood with his classmates, Todoroki beside him, Bakugo maintaining distance, and others scattered around, based on friendships he'd never developed. Principal Nezu gave the commencement speech. You've survived 3 years of the most intensive hero training in Japan. You faced real villains, participated in actual war, and proven your capabilities beyond any doubt. As you leave UA, remember that being a hero isn't about power. It's about choosing how you use that power. His eyes found Izuku during that last sentence. Some of you will inspire through hope, others through strength, others through determination, but all of you have the potential to make Hero Society better than you found it. The question is whether you'll have the courage to do so. Licenses were distributed. Izuku accepted his with the same neutral expression he'd worn for 3 years. He was officially the Magma hero, Sakazuki. The name had been his choice, honoring the admiral whose philosophy he'd adopted, whose conviction he'd made his own. After the ceremony, Endeavor approached. He'd been invited as a top hero to congratulate graduates, but his real purpose was obvious. Izuku, you're graduating. Yes, I wanted to say, I'm proud of you for what you've accomplished, for how strong you've become, for the hero you are. Izuku studied his father, this man who'd abandoned him, who'd spent 3 years trying to prove he could change, who'd consistently demonstrated effort even when Izuku gave him nothing in return. Thank you. 2 words. Simple. But they represented more than Izuku had given Endeavor in 18 years. Endeavor's eyes widened slightly. You've never thanked me before. You've never given me reason to before, but you've been consistent. You've proven you can maintain behavioral change. You've demonstrated you understand your failures. That deserves acknowledgement. Does that mean you're willing to accept me as your father? Izuku was quiet for a long moment. I'm willing to accept that you're trying to become the father you should have been. Whether you succeed is still uncertain, but I acknowledge the effort. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't love, but it was acceptance, the first step toward potential reconciliation. Endeavor looked like he wanted to hug him, but he restrained himself. Physical affection would take longer than verbal acknowledgement. Thank you, Izuku. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. Todoroki watched this exchange with quiet satisfaction. His half-brother was finally allowing their father back into his life, not from obligation, but from genuine recognition of change. It was progress. Real progress. The epilogue of Izuku's story began with his first day as a professional hero. He declined offers to join established agencies, Endeavor's, Hawk's, even All Might's newly formed office. Instead, he established his own agency with a clear purpose: rapid response to high-level villain threats. The agency was small initially, just Izuku and support staff, but he'd already begun recruiting heroes whose quirks complemented his own. Heroes with mobility, with reconnaissance capabilities, with tactical skills. The Rapid Response Division he'd proposed to the Commission was becoming reality, just independently funded rather than officially sanctioned. His first major deployment came within a week of opening. A villain organization attempted to take hostages in downtown Tokyo. 300 civilians held at gunpoint, villains demanding release of captured comrades. Standard hero protocol was negotiation, tactical positioning, carefully orchestrated rescue that prioritized avoiding casualties. Izuku's protocol was simpler. He arrived on scene, assessed the situation, calculated optimal approach. This is the Magma hero, Sakazuki. All villains have 10 seconds to release hostages and surrender. After 10 seconds, I'm coming in. Survival is not guaranteed. The villains laughed. You can't come in without risking the hostages. We're in control here. 5 seconds. You're bluffing. No hero would. Time's up. Izuku's magma form erupted through the building's wall, moving with impossible speed. Magma constructs separated hostages from villains in microseconds. His temperature spiked precisely around each villain while carefully avoiding civilians. The villains died screaming. The hostages never felt the heat. Mission duration, 47 seconds. Civilian casualties, 0. Villain casualties, all of them. The media arrived to find 300 rescued civilians, 17 dead villains, and Izuku standing calmly amid the melted interior of what had been a hostage situation. Was lethal force necessary? A reporter asked. Yes, these villains had killed hostages in previous incidents. Their demands were delaying tactics while they prepared to execute civilians. Immediate overwhelming force prevented casualties. That's what necessary means. Don't you feel any remorse for killing 17 people? Izuku looked directly at the camera. I feel satisfaction at eliminating 17 threats before they could hurt innocents. Remorse is what I'd feel if I'd negotiated while they killed hostages. That didn't happen, because I don't negotiate with villains. The interview went viral. Magma Hero refuses to negotiate with villains. Sakazuki's zero-tolerance policy eliminates hostage situation in under a minute. Is this the future of heroism or a return to violent vigilantism? Izuku ignored the headlines. Results spoke louder than commentary. Over the following months, his agency became the go-to response for high-level threats. Villain organizations learned quickly that Sakazuki didn't arrest, didn't negotiate, didn't show mercy. He eliminated threats, permanently, efficiently, absolutely. Crime rates in Tokyo dropped by 62% in 3 months. Villain organizations relocated to other cities rather than risk encountering him. Criminal activity shifted from brazen attacks to quiet operations designed to avoid his attention. The effect was exactly what Izuku had predicted. Fear as a deterrent more effective than rehabilitation or imprisonment. But his methods remained controversial. Half of Hero Society celebrated his effectiveness, half condemned his brutality. The Hero Commission continued monitoring, documenting, evaluating. Izuku continued operating exactly as he always had. 2 years after graduation, his agency had expanded significantly. 15 heroes, 30 support staff, deployment capability across the entire country. The Rapid Response Division wasn't officially sanctioned by the Commission, but it was unofficially recognized as the most effective hero organization in Japan. And Izuku, at 20 years old, was ranked number 3 hero in the country. Only All Might and Endeavor ranked higher, and both of them acknowledged that Izuku would likely surpass them within a few years. His relationship with Endeavor had evolved into something approaching actual father-son connection. Not warm, not emotionally open, but present. They worked together occasionally, coordinated on major threats, and maintained regular contact. Endeavor had proven his commitment to change. Izuku had accepted that proof and adjusted accordingly. You've become what I always wanted to create, Endeavor admitted during one operation. Powerful, determined, absolutely committed to protecting innocence. I just wish I'd been part of building that instead of absent for it. You weren't absent. You just weren't present. There's a difference. That's very generous. It's accurate. You contributed genetics that gave me power. Mom contributed everything else that made me effective. Credit where it's due. They worked in comfortable silence after that, father and son fighting side by side, proving that redemption, while difficult and incomplete, was possible. 5 years after graduation, Izuku's agency had become the largest independent hero organization in Japan. His methods remained unchanged. His body count exceeded 1,200. His effectiveness was statistically unmatched. And Hero Society had adapted around him rather than trying to restrict him. Some heroes adopted his zero-tolerance approach. Others maintained traditional methods. The Commission stopped trying to regulate him after his results consistently proved his methods effective. Public opinion remained divided but had shifted toward acceptance. Even people who disagreed with his methods acknowledged that he protected civilians more effectively than any hero in Japanese history. At 23 years old, Izuku was ranked number 1 hero in Japan. Not through popularity or public image, through pure effectiveness, through quantifiable results, through absolute justice applied absolutely. He stood on UA's rooftop, the same rooftop where All Might had once told him he couldn't be a hero without a quirk, and looked across Tokyo. Crime rates at historic lows, villain activity minimized, civilian casualties prevented by fear of his intervention. This was what absolute justice looked like in practice. Not perfect, not without cost, but undeniably effective. His phone buzzed, his mother calling for their weekly conversation. "Izuku, how are you?" "I'm fine, Mom, just finishing up paperwork from the last deployment." "I saw the news. 34 villains eliminated in Osaka. That's more than usual. They were targeting an elementary school, children. They didn't survive the mistake of threatening kids." Inka was quiet for a moment. "You're still you, still certain, still absolutely convinced you're right." "Because I am right. The evidence supports it." "I know. Sometimes I wish you could be less certain. Leave room for doubt, for questions, for wondering if there might be better ways. Doubt gets people killed. Certainty protects them. Your father said something similar yesterday. He's worried you've become too much like he used to be, so focused on results that you've forgotten why results matter." Izuku considered that. Results matter because they protect innocent people. I haven't forgotten that. Every villain I eliminate is one that can never hurt anyone again. That's worth any controversy, any criticism, any questioning. As long as you remember the people you're protecting, as long as you don't become so focused on eliminating threats that you forget why you're eliminating them. I won't, Mom. I promise. You keep me grounded. You remind me what all this power is for. They talked for another 20 minutes. Casual conversation about her work, about Izuku's agency, about the small details that made up their lives. When the call ended, Izuku stood alone on the rooftop, watching the city he protected. His mother was right to worry. The line between protecting people and becoming the threat you're protecting against was thinner than most heroes acknowledged. But Izuku knew where that line was. He'd studied it, analyzed it, understood its precise location, and he'd never cross it, because crossing it would invalidate everything he'd built, everything he'd proven, everything he'd become. His final thought before leaving the rooftop was characteristically blunt. Villains fear the heat. Let them burn. That's what justice looks like when it's absolute. He descended from the rooftop, returned to his agency, prepared for the next threat that would inevitably emerge, because threats always emerged. Villains always attacked, innocents always needed protection, and Sakazuki, the Magma hero, would always be there to eliminate those threats with overwhelming force and zero compromise. This was his justice, absolute, uncompromising, eternal, and hero society would adapt or be left behind. End.
And now, a massive thank you to the legends keeping this channel alive. For our pro-hero tier, the rising star leading the charge, Javon McQuire.
For our symbol of peace tier, the fearless hero standing tall, Omega, Toxic Rune, Akuma no Akami, Chris Talley, Eth Voice, Alexander Thompson, Remorsefuls, Black Vein, Justin Quantanal, Nicholas Barnes, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift Skater, Akainu Himejima, Corey Tokars, Jan, Zero Hope 3656, Devin Black, Rowdy Rich, King of the Pirates, Crow, Daniel Sharp, Roberto Ramos de Cristina, Dasher Games, Joe Bros, Aiden Schmidt, Mason Edwards, Rave on Crimson River, Dante Alaster, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Donna Cafe, Zeph, KC, Assassin 24, Howie 60, Ignacio, Albert, Carlos Terry, Rafael Taran, Kevin Hall.
And for our Hope of the Universe tier, the legends whose strength shakes the stars, Spin Town, Jaden Garrett, Greg Green, James, Quanyan Thompson, Big Fro Pro, Juan, I'm Calver, Coolsey. Your support fuels every story, every battle, every moment we create. You're not just supporters, you're the reason this universe keeps growing. Power without conviction is wasted. Mercy toward evil betrays the innocent. I learned that truth in blood and fire, and I'll never forget it. If you felt the heat of this journey, if my story resonated with your own fire, then subscribe and join me. More villains will fall, more justice will be delivered. The flames never die, and neither does my resolve. Until next time, let them burn.